When you see value in all directions, you add value in all directions. Accenture. Let there be change.
Welcome to AnyClip, the visual intelligence company, a revolutionary video platform that's lighting the way with solutions for any business looking to unlock the power of their videos. With groundbreaking automatic metadata tagging that can be organized by custom taxonomies. Effortless video management in one place with deep search capabilities. Contextual tags allow you to pair the right video to the right context, so you can deliver your video across channels with lightning-fast players from one centralized video library. Custom dashboards to better understand which videos drive the strongest engagements, why, and where. Instantly create new revenue streams by offering advertisers contextually targeted audiences based on rich content data. Create custom in-video campaigns with shoppable links to spark transaction, engagement, and audience growth. Or embed video players and stream live to viewers. Then create unique VOD experiences that optimize the value of videos for their life after live. It's the platform that's redefining the way we use video. Totally automated, centralized, and streamlined, advancing the video IQ of business globally. AnyClip, the visual intelligence company.
AI is improving the world. But successful deployments are not easy, and only 20% of AI projects see the light of day. With the right partner, you can deploy at more than 3 times that rate. The key to confidently deploying world-class AI is working with reliable, high-quality training data. For over 20 years, we've been the data partner for leading tech, automotive, financial services, healthcare, retail and commerce companies, as well as for nonprofit organizations and government institutions. Our customers enjoy the most cost-effective, highest ROI approach to train their AI models. Delivering quality training data on time and on budget is just the start of how we do that. We offer the most diverse, scalable labeling options across data types, languages, dialects, and security requirements. Our expertise and technology help us deliver world-class training data with fewer judgments and faster annotations. And most importantly, you get to do things your way. You can choose our managed service solution where we partner with your team, or your team can choose our platform and professional service option to annotate data at scale. Either way, we'll connect you to our global crowd of over 1 million skilled contributors that speak over 180 languages and dialects, covering over 130 countries. When your goal is to launch world-class AI, partnering with Appen gives you the confidence to deploy.
Life isn't always simple, but tracking your spending can be. Capital One credit card customers have easy ways to track spending, like notifications when new or unexpected charges are detected, so you can sit back and relax. Capital One is always looking out for you and your money.
Data is growing at an exponential rate. The amount of data created over the next 3 years will begin to surpass the data created over the last 30 years. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. In the next 5 years, the world will create more than 3 times the data in the previous 5. In 2019, The Economist found that data was estimated to be worth close to $8 trillion in the global economy. Leading enterprises are leveraging data as a driver for growth. Companies that scale artificial intelligence and machine learning beyond proof of concepts to company-wide execution at scale average a 32% lift in valuation relative to price to earnings and price to sales ratios. Leaders know the stakes are high, so they're committing executive attention to accelerating progress. Organizations that have achieved the highest levels of data scalability, data portability, and AI-ready infrastructure today are 4 times more likely than those lagging behind to have both a data strategy and a chief data officer. For 8 out of 10 business leaders, data strategy is a board-level conversation. Leaders power winning strategies with reactive, event-driven, data-rich digital experiences. They're also 6 times more likely to be deploying what we call the modern data stack, using Apache Cassandra, Kubernetes, Kafka, Spark, and Elasticsearch. And by embracing the modern data stack and committing executive attention, a majority of today's leaders attribute more than 10% of revenue to data and analytics. So embrace the stack, seize the opportunity, go farther and faster with data stacks.
Labelbox is the leading training data platform for teams to annotate data, manage people and processes, and iterate on results in a single location. Designed for speed and precision, we support image, video, text, and tiled geospatial data. Labelbox uses automatic task distribution and active learning to easily prioritize labeling the most important data. We are trusted by Fortune 500 enterprises as well as leading companies fueled by AI. What breakthrough will you make with Labelbox? Try it for free today.
Technology is changing fast, and the skills you and your company need to keep up are in short supply. But with Skillsoft, you can drive project success by equipping your team with future-ready skills. DevOps, security, cloud, data, and more. Through Skillsoft Percipio, you get labs and boot camps to accelerate learning, skills and role-based paths to retain your best talent, and leadership skills that drive tech projects forward. Future-proof your team today with Skillsoft.
We had a blank page and we had to invent every aspect of the system. Imagine that you have to build a car. Here we had to build everything, right? We have to put the wheels, do the engine, the interior, the design, and every piece of that technology, we had to rebuild it, for the cloud.
And I love technology because the limit is your brain, your imagination, there is no physical limit to what you can do.
Hi there. I'm Sam, your guide to Soul Machines. How are you doing?
Soul Machines is an autonomous animation company that has built the world's first digital brain. It enables human-like face-to-face interactions that are personal, empathetic, and interactive in exactly the same way that our human brain animates us and brings us to life when we interact with each other.
So what's important about this human operating system is it providing a connection between artificial intelligence and people, but even more importantly, it's creating this connection between people and artificial intelligence. So as we explore the potential for this, people can put this technology to work in a way that redefines their business, redefines what is possible for their customers, for their clients, for their industry. And we're moving into an era where we're going to spend more and more of our time interacting with artificial intelligence, with robots and other forms of automated machinery. And the core concept behind what we do and the technology we deliver is, wouldn't all of those machines be more useful to us as humans if they were more like us? Literally, Soul Machines puts a face on artificial intelligence. I mean, it adds the human qualities of emotional intelligence to the AI systems, and it means we can interact with artificial intelligence in an incredibly human-like way.
Soul Machines digital people provide a safe and engaging way to connect brands and customers. We are creating mind-blowing experiences like Nestle's Cookie Coach, Bull's Skincare Advisor, WHO's Florence Healthcare Expert, and entertainment twins like will.i.am and more. Soul Machines digital people are helping companies all over the world and in multiple industries. Soul Machines' autonomous animation is continually evolving to include more complex interactions with content and the world around us. Soul Machines, astonishing digital people.
Tamer partners with leading organizations across the globe to master their data at scale to drive marketing and sales, lower spend, or reduce risk. Our cloud-native data mastering solutions use human-guided machine learning to connect thousands of internal and external data sources in weeks or months instead of years. The result is comprehensive, up-to-date records of customers, products, suppliers, and more to drive analytical outcomes at unprecedented scale. Are you ready to modernize your MDM solution?
Your fragmented data is causing problems. Customers are interacting with your brand across an ever-increasing number of touchpoints, while your company is using more solutions and vendors than ever before. But the data being collected is disconnected and doesn't speak the same language. Each new technology handles data differently and in its own silo, so you have to set up rules, audiences, and definitions over and over again in every tool, every time, creating incomplete insights for your business and inconsistent experience for your customers. The demand for a single view of the customer has never been greater. Fortunately, a solution is here, and it's simple. Telium's Customer Data Hub starts by capturing data at the source. Telium integrates with every customer touchpoint, whether it's a digital or in-person experience. We then combine this known and anonymous customer data and enrich it based on your business rules to create a unified and portable view of your customers that every team member and vendor can utilize with consistency and clarity. Analysts can gain insights. Marketers can engage customers at the right time with the right programs. And your brand can truly put the customer at the center of its strategy. That's the Customer Data Hub. It transforms your fragmentation into a foundation that handles data securely, honors customer privacy, and gives you the power to collect, unify, and understand your most valuable resource. And with over 1,000 turnkey integrations, act with speed and clarity. Let Telium turn your data into the fuel that powers your overall business and puts your customer back at the heart of everything you do.
When you see value in all directions, you add value in all directions. Accenture, let there be change.
Welcome to AnyClip, the visual intelligence company, a revolutionary video platform that's lighting the way with solutions for any business looking to unlock the power of their videos. With groundbreaking automatic metadata tagging that can be organized by custom taxonomies. Effortless video management in one place with deep search capabilities. Contextual tags allow you to pair the right video to the right context so you can deliver your video across channels with lightning-fast players from one centralized video library. Custom dashboards to better understand which videos drive the strongest engagements, why, and where. Instantly create new revenue streams by offering advertisers contextually targeted audiences based on rich content data. Create custom in-video campaigns with shoppable links to spark transaction, engagement, and audience growth. Or embed video players and stream live to viewers. Then create unique VOD experiences that optimize the value of videos for their life after live. It's the platform that's redefining the way we use video. Totally automated, centralized, and streamlined, advancing the video IQ of business globally. AnyClip, the visual intelligence company.
I'm Megan Padel, the Director of Event Marketing for VentureBeat, and I'm excited to welcome you to Transform 2021, the AI and Data Event of the Year for Enterprise Executives. This tutorial will help you get started with Transform's online experience. Now, if you're watching the live stream on YouTube or a social channel, definitely go to VentureBeat.com and follow the links to join us in our custom event portal. Now, live streaming on all main stage sessions is 100% free of charge, and the main stage sessions will all be available on demand after the event. For those who have registered for the event, are speakers, or otherwise have VIP passes, check your email for important information, links, and invites to private sessions and roundtables. Now, I'm going to start by showing you our event portal, which is where you will find the full event. This is our main stage, our polls, and during sessions that have enough time, our Q&A. Now, we're also here for you online if you have any difficulties accessing this, but first off, check your email, and then if you still can't figure it out, we're always available at eventsupport@venturebeat.com. Now, this portal has a few different pages, and the main ones are what you'll see here, including our stage, how to participate, network, some of our Transform World partner events, our sponsors, and again, this how-to video just in case you get lost. We will also have the agenda. This one's pretty straightforward. It is going to be the full agenda for the entire 5 days. And since it is 5 days long, there are multiple ways to sort through the tracks, the specific, welcome remarks or executive forums that you're looking for, and really just find what's relevant to you. And then on demand, this is where all of the videos will live along with our full editorial coverage after the event. So going back to the lounge, if you are a VIP pass holder or otherwise have been invited, you should be able to log in up here at the top and then be able to participate directly in all of our wave sessions, our breakout sessions, and our roundtables. For everyone who is looking to network and make connections, you can come over here, click over, and this will bring you to our matchmaking app, which again, if you've checked your email, you should have received your login information. This is also the best way to access our exhibitor hall, which includes all of our sponsors and our partners so that you can connect with them one-on-one and learn more about their products and services. Here at the bottom, we have Transform World, which includes all of our partner events from Data Natives, the AI and Data Analytics Mini Summit, and the Data Science Salon. Now, if you have questions for our speakers, you can actually do that right here on the portal by entering your Q&A during the right time and just going ahead and adding your name and hitting send. You don't necessarily have to log in or anything to ask questions, and you are allowed to remain anonymous. If you do add your name, that'll just help us know who you are and call that out. During the event, we'll also have polls. So we encourage you to take part, get active, and start answering those questions. Now, if you click over from Make Connections, what you're going to land on is our networking app. This is the best place to come to connect with other people. So there's a few things. Speed networking, which are happening during dedicated times where you'll be able to have 3-minute rapid fire meetings with other attendees recommended for you, which is a curated list of people that we think you should connect with, people who are interested in you, so people who would like to connect with you. And again, sort of those basic event details from your agenda, your specific schedule that you'd like to make. You can go through all of our attendees, all of our speakers, and then check out the featured sponsors, along with going in and actually, being able to meet with them or just learn more by visiting their booths. So once again, if you are here on the lounge, you can head over to Make Connections, and that will bring you straight to our one-on-one networking app. So if you have any questions, again, we are always available at event support at VentureBeat.com. And if you haven't registered, which is probably why you're not seeing all of these fun roundtables, go ahead, register in here on VentureBeat.com, log in, and check your email for more information.
Good day, everybody, and welcome to day 5 of Transform 2021. We are here in the final day. It's been quite the journey. We have had some incredible speakers. Actually, not some. I can't think of a single speaker that hasn't been amazing. So I hope you feel like we've given you the very best value for the whole week. And if you're a little confused, just to remind you, if you saw me earlier as Editor-in-Chief of Data Economy, that's okay, because that's also my job. But right now, I'm back to being VentureBeat MC and your host for Transform. So it's okay. We all wear many hats these days. That's startup life for you. Today's summit focuses on the big picture in the world of AI and data. Coming up today, you'll hear from Melvin Greer of Intel and Vanya Yosifovsky of Airbnb in a fantastic fireside chat. We also have our Best of Transform. That's where the VentureBeat expert panel and our not to be missed AI and Innovation Awards and our Women in AI Awards. I mean, we've got so much in store for you today. You're not going to want to miss a single moment of it. Of course, we can't bring all of this amazing content to you without our sponsors. We absolutely have to thank our sponsors every time because we really couldn't do this without them. Thank you to Abe AI, Accenture, Appen, Beyond Minds, Capgemini, Capital One, DataStax, Five9, Intel, Kazisto, Labelbox, Skillsoft, Snowflake, Soul Machines, Tamer, Telium, and Unity. And don't forget, of course, to visit the expo area, the virtual expo area. It's down there. Go scroll down, find the expo area. And also don't forget to check out the VB Boss pages on the event portal. That's where we list all of the top tech companies in each category. Of course, it's not just our sponsors that help us to bring all this to you, it's our partners too. So huge thanks to our partners. Our partners this year are 3PC, AnyClip, Data Natives, Data Science Salon Virtual, Evergreen Creative, Unite.ai, Women in Big Data, Women in Data Science, and Women in Voice. Now, today is the day when we make even more use of that wonderful hashtag that we came up with. You'll remember it. It's hashtag VBTransform. Frankly, I don't stop babbling on about it, so I really hope you've got it by now. But we're going to do something special with it today. If you've been using VBTransform on any platform where you can use a hashtag, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, whether it's Instagram stories or posts, or even TikTok. I'm still waiting for somebody to do a TikTok with VBTransform. Please, somebody make my week. Wherever you use it, we'll be measuring the engagement. Whoever's created the most engagement this week using that hashtag, you're going to get a $100 Amazon card. And we will announce that right towards the end of the day. So you absolutely have to hang around to see if you've won. Don't forget, if you're tweeting, you could end up on the live Twitter feed. So we might make you semi-famous too. For online access pass, VIP pass holders, you can ask questions in Slido. It's right over there. And we'll get through as many of those as we can with each of our speakers. And for our VIPs, we encourage you to connect with other event attendees in our one-to-one networking platform. You know I'm going to point now, don't you? You've got used to this. It's right there. We've sent you a link by email. You can also access it by clicking the link on our event platform. Any problems, issues, worries, woes, just go to eventsupport@venturebeat.com. So email eventsupport@venturebeat.com. We'll be happy to look after you. Now, of course, we're not just giving away $100 of Amazon gift cards today for the most engagement on the hashtag. We're also giving away 3 $100 Amazon gift cards to anyone that uses the networking platform. So go ahead and network. We're going to choose 3 people at random, and we'll announce them at the end of the day along with the hashtag winner. So do stick around till the end of the day. And of course, you know VentureBeat, we have an amazing community. You're part of that. We have an incredible community. We have so many amazing readers. If you want to reach out to those readers, visit VB Lab in the expo area to learn how to get those secure those exclusive custom event sponsorships for upcoming VentureBeat events. All right, it's time to get started. And it really is an awesome start. We are very pleased to begin our sessions today with Intel's Chief Scientist, Melvin Greer. In this fireside chat with VentureBeat's own Matt Marshall, Dr. Greer will separate AI ambition from reality and describe important technical and non-technical considerations designed to improve AI adoption. So please welcome both Melvin Greer and Matt Marshall. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Matt Marshall, founder and CEO of VentureBeat, and we're speaking with Dr. Melvin Greer, Chief Data Scientist of Intel. And the subject is AI innovation, the ambition versus the reality. Dr. Greer, you've mentioned several gaps between the ability of companies to actually realize their ambitions versus reality. And you've talked about one of those gaps being emotional intelligence and mindfulness. Can you discuss what you mean by that?
Well, Matt, I absolutely can. Intel is absolutely excited about artificial intelligence, and we're spending a lot of time and energy turning ourselves into a data-centric organization at the request of most of our customers. Our customers are driving us into this discussion around artificial intelligence and data science. they absolutely are focused on trying to take all of the data that they have acquired and turn it into insight. And so we're really, really very, very focused on AI as a core competency. There is this gap that you described. Intel is seeing organizations, they are doing great work and developing artificial intelligence for lots of different use cases. But there is a significant gap between the ambition that they want to achieve in artificial intelligence and the reality associated with how well those projects and that data and insight is delivered. One of the key areas that is a focus that needs to be established right up front when we start thinking about next generation AI is emotional intelligence and mindfulness. And this is so, especially as it relates to the pandemic. The reason is because in our current state with this pandemic and the way that we have to do things at home, work with our families, do many different things at the same time, our ability to stay focused and mindful can be compromised. And so as developers and consumers of artificial intelligence, our ability to get to the heart of what we're trying to achieve can be compromised when we are not in an emotional state and mindful and present. Now, this might sound like a very small issue, but when you add this idea of artificial intelligence as being used as part of a cyber threat intelligence framework, now what you see is our inability to be emotionally intelligent and mindful in a state that's able to understand when someone's trying to use a chatbot or some other adversarial machine learning or generative adversarial network against us, then it does provide us a situation where we need to be much more cognizant of how mindful we are and how present we are.
Dr. Greer, we have a lot of data scientists and business leaders listening to this talk. One of the takeaways you mentioned earlier from this gap between ambition and reality is that you need to align your AI and cloud computing initiatives. Can you talk a little bit about what you mean by that?
Matt, one of the things that my wife will tell you is that she agrees with this slide around the data scientist being the sexiest job of the 21st century. And as you can see, I'm quite sexy and handsome today. So she agrees with that. But one of the things that is also noted in the HBR survey of about 3,000 executives in 14 sectors in 10 different countries is that only 20% of survey respondents have actually implemented AI as part of their core business. And so as a result of this survey, what we're seeing is that there is an inflection point. And what it requires us to do is think more clearly around all the other initiatives that are going on in our digital transformation or artificial intelligence projects. And this ability to align the artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, and cloud computing initiatives, not that they require the same skills or should move at the same pace or achieve the same goals, but that they should be aligned so that they become a force multiplier. And so that organizations have an understanding of where cloud computing fits, because it is a catalyst for AI, as it is in many ways the place where lots of data is stored. And then, of course, cyber, because we need to ensure that the data models, the algorithms, all have a security framework that extends from the enterprise to the cloud. And so this alignment is absolutely critical in being able to bridge this AI ambition reality gap.
Dr. Greer, you've talked about the significant investments that some companies make in various technologies. Deep learning, you can blow millions of dollars in over a night or two, sometimes with training. So you've got to stay up with the trends, and if you don't, you could fall behind. There are better trends, and one of the emerging trends you've talked about is neuromorphic computing, and another is quantum computing. But Gartner talks about those being sometimes 10 years away for companies to actually be using these technologies. And so how soon do you think neuromorphic computing is to come along where companies are actually using these?
Well, what I'll tell you, Matt, is that neuromorphic and quantum computing represent the next generation in research when it comes to artificial intelligence. Intel has a full family or fit for purpose compute set of capabilities that range from Atom through deep learning accelerators and field programmable gate arrays at the edge that are currently not in research. They're available to buy now. But when it comes to neuromorphic and quantum, these are very much part of a research capability. And in 2017, we formed the Intel Neuromorphic Research Community. We have about 100 universities and probably about 50 or so industry partners that participate in basic research in 5 research areas. And, we've been quite proud of the success that we've made. We've moved from a environment with a chip called low-he-he, which is got about 130 million neurons, which is about the size of a fruit fly. And we've moved to Pokahi Beach, which is a neuromorphic system of about 64 of these low-he-he chips, and that represents about 1 billion neurons and synapses. And the reason that's important is because we're now getting almost 0.1% of the human brain. But when we think about these next generation artificial intelligence capabilities, I think when we compare how likely it is for a commercial entity to drive to neuromorphic versus quantum, we certainly are much closer to being able to achieve real commercial capabilities in neuromorphic because we aren't having to deal with absolute zero and decoherence and superposition in ways that sometimes require us to suspend our disbelief in physics. And so what is absolutely sure, in my opinion, is that we will see commercial applications in neuromorphic brain-inspired computing much sooner than we will with quantum. And in fact, if you take a look at some of the use cases that are out there, we've got a neuromorphic computing that can detect olfactory and other senses. We're moving to take full advantage of the ultra low power and ultra high speed associated with neuromorphic. I think the most significant area that we're excited about, though, is that we have very small data sets that are required in order to get very important insights. Much like when I come home from work and I see my wife's face, I don't need her to spend an hour telling me that she needs a break. I can simply see from her face in a split second that I need to get the kids and give her a little bit of a break. So I think that we're much closer to neuromorphic than we are quantum.
Dr. Greer, how soon will neuromorphic computing actually be usable by your average technology company or end user brand company for that matter?
Well, I think, like I said, the neuromorphic research community has both hardware and software. Anyone who joins this community is getting a new software development kit that is specifically designed as a software optimization mechanism for this new structure in hardware and compute platforms. And in terms of timeliness, I would likely say, we're probably about 5 to 10 years out from a commercial application in neuromorphic computing.
Dr. Greer, what are some examples of real applications in neuromorphics that companies will use?
Well, I think there are a number of promising ones. Ones that I think we have lined up and are in the process of testing is brain-connected arms and legs. So the idea of being able to do things with now our brain so that we can control limbs and other organs is important. As I mentioned, I think that we'll see significant focus on optimization methods and algorithms that provide optimization capabilities and streams. We have a series of use cases that might be helpful for folks to take a look at our neuromorphic research page. If you go to intel.neuromorphic.com, there's a lot of research there.
Dr. Greer, we talked about the emerging technologies for companies to take advantage of in the future, but let's bring it back to 2021 and the decision making that has to happen now. How do organizations best stay on top of trends?
Well, as you can see from this slide, Matt, there's no less serious conversation about AI than you can have around investments. Unfortunately, in spite of the fact that investments have tripled since 2016, what we're seeing is those investments are being driven by a fear of missing out. These are not investments that are being driven by people who are having multiple successes in the development and deployment of artificial intelligence. When we take a look at Forbes' evaluation of 700 C-suite folks, 91% said they believe AI adoption is going to help them, but only 12% are actually executing a strategy. So, when we think about all of the enthusiasm and investment and activity around artificial intelligence, it does require a pragmatic approach. And so, there's a couple of things that I would recommend right off the bat. Probably this audience is not going to be surprised that there are many places in business where artificial intelligence is not the answer to the question that you're asking. So, when we think about that, what that means is that we need to be absolutely crystal clear about what problem we're trying to solve, and not whether or not we can take deep learning applications and run them in places where we've never run them before. This idea of understanding the workforce is probably the most critical one, because right now, when we have a lack of diverse talent, a lack of inclusive talent in the development and distribution of artificial intelligence capabilities, it requires us to pretend like everybody is representative of the very homogeneous people that make up the talent pool. And often what we see is that is not conducive to closing this gap. So this idea of understanding how to get a more diverse talent is important. And then, of course, we're not going to see wholesale rip and replace either. And so what we will see is a human-machine collaboration. And so this idea of dealing with sabotage of AI systems is absolutely critical, because data is not oil and data is not fuel. Data is people. And so when we create a human-centric approach to data and AI systems, it'll be better. Of course, we've talked a little bit about the legal, societal, and ethical implications. This is not going to go away. We absolutely have to do a much better job. And Intel has published its ethical principles, a human rights policy around how we hope that folks use our technologies. And then, of course, we're engaging in forums that are not purely tech. Like, so the work we're doing with the United Nations development goals, and with UNESCO on how to use AI for good. These are not tangential activities. These are absolutely required in order to be successful in closing the gap. And then, of course, prioritize the development of a data strategy. I cannot tell you, Matt, how many people ask me how to develop an AI strategy and don't have access to or management of the data that they need in order to become successful. And we've already talked about the last one, which is the alignment of these kind of initiatives. So I think if we really take a good look at some of those tasks, it will guide us into closing that gap, and we can be much more successful in the deployment and delivery of AI solutions.
Dr. Greer, you mentioned that data is one of the most significant gaps for organizations. Do you have any advice for our listeners on how you close that gap?
Well, man, 85% of a data scientist's job today is focusing on making data available, manageable, and governable so that it can be used well before they start anything to do with analysis. And we've actually had that problem for a decade. And that problem won't solve itself until we start classifying, managing, and labeling data at creation. Now, this is not an easy task to go back and try and clean and make sure data becomes relevant or hyper-relevant. But the fact is that we're creating data at such a rate, 3.7 terabytes per man, woman, and child every day on the planet. And what that means is that we're suffering from a technical debt when it comes to the ability to develop AI systems that have to have their data access, management, and governance be refactored after the great algorithms have been developed. Because we're still very much in a situation where if we have really bad data, we will simply do stupid things faster with machines, and we will train them to do things which are inherently erroneous or biased. And so this discussion around cleansing of data and being clear-eyed about a data strategy is absolutely significant. I'll give you an example. We had one of our important government agencies come to us and ask us about the development of an AI strategy. And we were very, very firm and said, we're very interested in helping you develop an AI strategy, but we absolutely are confident that you would be better off creating a data strategy first. And in fact, that has happened. And so, as you know, in the federal government, every federal agency has got the legal responsibility to assign a federal chief data officer that is going to be responsible for handling data at the enterprise level. Well, now that we have a data strategy, we're now able to help these data officers align their capabilities so that data isn't just shared between one person like me and you in email, but could be shared across government for the betterment of the citizens and the services that we all need.
Thank you. Hello, we're here live with Dr. Greer for questions from the audience. And I'm going to take a look at the questions that have come in. Dr. Greer, how does your team know when it's time to remodel your machine learning models, or if it's time to totally update and redo something you've built?
Wow, I love this question because it really gets at the heart of one of the things we spend a lot of time trying to avoid, and that's technical debt in the development of AI solutions. One of the things that we find that our customers experience is the ability to drive right into the prototype or the development of an AI solution. And what we encourage is a real thoughtful process earlier in the development, well before implementation and prototyping, so that we don't have to do too much of this redo. This technical debt is a serious issue because it involves the rethinking, reframing of the problem statement, an understanding of what the data sets are that are now the most impactful to help solve it, and are we tuning the analytics to ensure that we get the right outcome. We spend a significant amount of time doing audits and checks of our algorithms because they have a weird tendency of having what I would call unforeseen, undesirable, and maybe unanticipated outcomes. And so the ability to constantly monitor and check the algorithms really helps us avoid the major redo that I described earlier. It also is very fundamental to this development of algorithms that are ethical and that provide a real understanding of where the bias is that's coming into the analytic capability. And so our team focuses on development of regular, systemic, as well as algorithmic checks. And then even while the algorithms are being retrained by new data that's been developed as a result of the analysis, we go back and try and determine whether or not we have some outliers or we have some elements in the data that are skewing it one way or another in an unanticipated fashion. One of the things that often happens when we have data scientists that are focused in this area is they tend to throw out the data that doesn't fit the right pattern. And one of the things we try to avoid is this multiple imputation process, which results in the throw out of data, and actually try and find out what is the underlying rationale for this outlier, and is it trying to tell us something that we ought to listen to? So this question is important because it suggests that there needs to be a constant auditing and continuous monitoring of the way the algorithms and the data sets run.
Yeah, Dr. Greer, that's a great answer. I want to follow up with a related question here. You've addressed how orgs should be doing it, how you are doing it, but practically speaking, thoughts on, this is the question, thoughts on how organizations should enforce responsible AI? Should they self-regulate? And if so, how? Research teams are often below the product teams. I think this is what the question is trying to say in terms of authority. Could you talk a little bit about how that has to happen within orgs?
Sure. I'm not really a fond of the concept of enforcement, because people when they have this idea that we're going to be putting down some hard and fast, unbreakable, unnegotiable kinds of constructs, they tend to not be workable because they're too fragile and too rigid. So what we really are aspiring to, because this idea of accuracy is very separate from this idea of responsibility or ethical behavior, right? So the Greek word ethos is associated with ethical, and it relates to this idea of a moral understanding of what's right and wrong and fair. And so how do we arrive at this ethical construct is really when we add more diverse contributors to the development of the solution and product, and ultimately the analytics and the analysis. If it's not diverse, it's not ethical. So if you want to enforce anything, focus on ensuring that you have a variety of people's perspectives in the development of the capability. You have people of different racial and gender, maybe ethnic differences. Certainly, you're going to look to get differences in the way people think and thoughts, because 21 is a very different thing at a liquor store than it is at a casino. And so we need to have the ability to see the exact same data and have a very different reaction and see if there is something that is going to impede our ability to get to something that's ethical and reasonable and responsible. Because what we're talking about here is not oil, and we're not talking about fuel, and we're not talking about AI as bacon. AI is people. And so at this point, our ability to create a accurate, responsible, and ethical construct around AI is actually affecting people's lives in a very, very significant way.
Thank you, Dr. Greer. We're running out of time, so maybe a quick answer on this one, because we've got about 30 seconds left. You mentioned neuromorphic computing. How is this tech different from the existing GPUs, and what are some of the benefits?
GPUs don't have anything to do with neuromorphic computing. In fact, GPUs are more on the traditional side of computing. Neuromorphic computing is brain-inspired. It takes the same neuron and synapse construct in the brain and replicates it in silicon architectures. The primary benefits are hyper speed, low, small data sets, and a hyper amount of generated assets or analysis.
Okay, great. Unfortunately, we're out of time. Dr. Greer, thank you very much for joining us at Transform.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much to Melvin and Matt for that awesome conversation. And very, very pleased now to keep things moving along, and extremely pleased to introduce Vanya Yosifovsky, CTO of hosting at Airbnb, in a conversation with, again, Matt Marshall, about the leading trends and advancements in applied AI and how enterprises can scale these powerful applications. Please take it away, Vanya and Matt.
Hello, I'm Matt Marshall, founder and CEO of VentureBeat. I'm speaking with Vanya Josifovsky, CTO of hosting at Airbnb. Welcome back, Vanya. You've been with us a couple of times over the last couple of years. It's great to see you again.
Thank you, Matt. It's been a while. It's good to be here. Thanks for inviting me today.
We are talking today about the leading trends and advancements in applied AI and how companies can scale these AI applications. Vanya, how do you see AI innovation going forward? Where should we look for it?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Matt. I think this is arguably one of the most important scientific field today for companies in many, many different domains. And if you look over the history of where innovation has happened in general, and specifically in AI, that has been a moving target. Like long time back, academia led everything, and there were certain proprietary technologies developed in the companies, and that has changed over time. I think we've seen over time a raise of innovation in AI coming from bigger companies like Google, Amazon, and Microsoft, Facebook. And so the question is, going forward, is it going to be academia? Is it going to be the larger companies and cloud providers, or is it going to be an ecosystem of smaller companies? And I think traditionally it has been academia that's doing the step function change, and more of the commoditization and heavy lifting come from larger companies. Things like TensorFlow and PyTorch have been very, very influential in the last decade or so. But what's going to happen going forward, and not only for AI, but the whole technological ecosystem, including storage, including everything else that's coming, where the innovation is going to come is going to, I think, somewhat change than what we have seen in the last 10 years. What I'm seeing is that the step function is likely to happen still in academia or in academic-like research in the larger companies. And I think that's how it should be. I think academia should be focused on those step function changes where the technology changes at once. That's a riskier kind of a thing. So the question then of what we've seen in the last decade where open source technology is adapted or provided and adapted by cloud providers, and how will that play out? I think the center of gravity will slightly shift from the larger companies into smaller independent companies. In certain areas like storage and cloud infrastructure management, we see multiple small, mid-sized to small-sized companies coming in and providing new technology in an open source model. And I think this is what's going to happen to AI. We're going to see more of that, the small, mid-sized companies providing the technology while guarding from takeover from larger companies, which has happened in the past in storage, for example, and in search and so on. So I believe that innovation will move somewhat from larger companies into somewhat smaller companies, and we'll see a whole ecosystem of AI companies that's being developed now that will shape the future. And I think it will definitely be where the innovation of applied AI will happen in the next 10 years or so. And so if we look at what's happening today, there's some amazing technologies coming up. I think the graph neural networks are very interesting. I think some of the transformer models are very interesting. And I see even companies like GitHub and Hugging Face that are providing the infrastructure for smaller players to share the results and to develop things forward. That's what I see today.
Vanya, you've talked in the past about deep learning being a big trend in AI over the last couple of years. You mentioned today graph neural networks. Why are graph neural networks such a big deal in 2021?
I think if we look at the deep learning paradigm that came in, at the core of it, it was a different usage of structuring data, like images that are grid and text is a sequence. And then on the top of it, there was innovation of scaling this model tremendously. However, and the applications that this innovation enabled are just amazing. However, there is some rigidity in how the data is used and this structure that's needed for the models to work. I feel that the graph neural networks is the next iteration that allow us to use a lot more data within the deep learning framework in a much more natural way. And I think that's where some of the excitement comes in. Furthermore, I think what's really interesting is that if you look at innovation over the last few years in processing images and text, what we see is that there is a sequence of architectures that are developed, or reference models that people use. And those models change somewhat over time, but also people just increase the model sizes. And so one of the interesting aspects of graph neural networks is that they almost allow you to have a flexible architecture. In some senses, the data defines the architecture of the model. And these are just last results that I've seen, and some of it coming from places like Stanford, but we need to go forward and see if we can automate the architecture design, if we can use the data to power that. I think that's a very interesting promise here. GNNs today are already used in industry, in application. I know, we've been doing some research in using them, but also Pinterest uses them extensively for recommendation, Uber for fraud. I know Alibaba uses it for some of their core applications, so they're already showing practical application promise, but I feel that they will open a whole new area where you're going to be able to apply the deep learning paradigm a lot easier on a whole different set of data. That's what excites me there. I'm looking forward to more research there to see what's going to happen.
There's also a lot of interest in large language models, including GPT-3 and emerging competitors to that model. What are you seeing as some of the applications for enterprise applications there?
So, I mean, it's undoubtedly another fascinating technology. I feel that, taking the attention model to the next level and just scaling the size of it. I mean, 200 billion or close to 200 billion parameters is something we couldn't even imagine only a few years back, and making sure that the model does not overfeed and just finding the data to train this model is a daunting and huge task. And I think we're getting within only a few orders of magnitude from a brain size kind of a model, right? And in our area, we can say only a few orders of magnitude, because we know in computing we do leaps in orders of magnitude. In other industries that could have been centuries. Here that could be years, honestly. And so I think it's a fascinating technology and an amazing technological achievement. I do feel that to use models like that in production, we need to get some predictability. We have seen some amazing examples in generating text, in generating web pages and similar areas in translation, which I think is where you would be able to use these models because they're less of a mission critical things. This type of a work probably won't fit well initially in things like self-driving, or at least the top loop of it. However, I do feel that it's a little bit harder to use this type of models in production because you need that predictability, and we haven't been able to fit this even in less mission critical things like chatbots. But I believe that that's coming, and it's probably a few years out. A little bit harder to apply this type of models. Yeah, I'm not aware of any commercial deployments today of GPT-3. I mean, or similar technology.
Yeah, that raises an interesting question, Vanya. You're waiting and seeing, waiting for you to be ready for this model. As an executive in a scaled enterprise, you're at Airbnb. How urgent is it to push ahead with what can be expensive experimentation in some cutting edge areas versus sitting back and waiting to see the results from some of these open models before you really jump in?
Yeah, I mean, if we step back from just talking about how interesting technologies are, I think in reality, every place I know, even the largest companies, you have constrained resources, and that's where the game is a constraint optimization problem. A backpack kind of filling problem of what are you going to do because you have only a few resources, and especially resources that understand complicated technologies. And if you look at the technological landscape, even for me, there's just so much interesting stuff there. Like I could spend days working with some of these technologies and playing around. And I think there is a tendency sometimes in technical teams to do that. So I feel that in every company, in company like ours, but also in other companies of similar size, you really need to pick which technologies, which cutting edge technologies you're going to invest in. And the number is probably a few. And so I think it's choosing the critical areas where you need to use the state of the art, while in the majority of the areas, you should apply something less sophisticated. It's one of the hardest part of my job because I do want to hire the best and the smartest people, but then we do want to channel that ability into the areas that will provide business impact and kind of in some cases, refrain from using state of the art until we think that we'll get the return back. So yeah, that's the hard part.
Yeah, well, I was reading an Accenture report on the enterprise and innovation. It was talking about one of the leading trends is companies competing on architecture. So are you essentially saying, Vanya, that once you have that right architecture, you can move to from experimentation to deployment really quickly? Can you talk a little bit about that lag between experimentation? You have that research department, you start training, and then you have the inference later on. Presumably that takes a lot of time. Are you confident that you've pulled that down to a pretty short lag?
Experimentation in terms of new technology experimentation is one thing, and experimentation in terms of iterative improvement in the system is another thing. And I think in the latter is where companies invest a lot of effort to make sure that this goes quickly, and this has many different steps, from the data ingestion and cleaning to making sure your data is correct, all the way through productionizing models and so on. That's the bread and butter and most of the AI investment that we have, and I know companies of similar size have. Bigger providers are providing some infrastructure that will allow this type of iterations. The balance here is to make sure you preserve your iteration speed and to make sure that things are adapted very well to your data sources, to the way of log collections and so on. So yeah, that's where the focus is for me and for others in Airbnb. Experimenting with new technologies is a much smaller group of people, and it's usually guided by much more kind of focused way of thinking about what we're trying to achieve and get here.
Yeah, Vanya, on the organization side, what are some of the successful patterns you've seen in setting up AI teams? Can you talk a little bit about those? You've been at Pinterest, you're at Airbnb, you've been at other large companies too. What are some of the successful patterns, and maybe what are some of the mistakes you've seen?
Yeah, I think there's many different ways to be successful and many different ways to fail at this in some ways. And a lot of times, when a leader lands in a company, because sometimes you're there from the very beginning, but that's rare, right? But a lot of times when somebody as a leader lands in a company, I feel that the most important thing is first to understand the business domain, because business domains differ and they have subtle impact of how things should be organized. But also the history and the history of the organizational structure, the history of the company and the culture and so on. And I say this because those things sometimes shape how the company is organized. Even technology is sometimes shaped by historical circumstances. And so coming in and saying we have to change this and it has to be exactly like I've seen it before is usually extremely disruptive. And so defining an organizational structure requires this understanding of the history. And then usually you want to do the bonsai approach. If you can trim it gradually, it's much easier than just doing a wholesale kind of organizational change. And, with some pragmatism, in a lot of cases, you can bring the organization where it needs to be. Now, in some cases, an intervention is required. If things are seriously broken, then things have to be changed and you push forward. It's just, it requires a little thought of how you come to the conclusion of what you want to do. And also a good handle of what are the goals to solve here. Do we want to focus the teams? Are there too many technologies? Do we need excellence in our AI? Maybe because things are done subpar. Is that proliferation in a lot of companies? It's not a question of lack of AI. It's a question of too much AI because there's too many models around. And if things are broken up, then you can't control it. And there's a couple major models here. I mean, there is embedded and there is integrated teams. And I think they both have pros and cons, and usually some kind of a hybrid model works the best. What we usually do is we integrate more of the infrastructure, more of the underlying components, maybe training, standardized training and so on, and inference in one place. And then we have individual embedded teams that will use that to adjust this to a particular use case. And so on the integrated kind of team approach, you get usually disconnection from the business, and that's really important for those teams to have a line of sight of how their work impacts the business objective directly, and that would be the biggest problem. On the embedded teams, you get isolation, you get repetition of work, and so on. So you got to make sure that those teams are part of that guild, understand what's happening in the company, and feel integrated, because otherwise things will be repetitive and they won't be really of the highest quality they need to be. So that's, I would say, I've seen success in many different ways, and I've seen failure in different ways. Focusing on what you try to achieve, taking in account the history, I think will get you to the right place to how you need to organize a team.
Yeah, Vanya, you talk about team and reliance on team. As a leader, what would you leave with our listeners here today in terms of a key takeaway for successful deployment of AI as a leader?
I would say look at the company, understand the business model, understand the domain, understand the team that you have in a lot of cases, because sometimes like playing Tetris, you need to fit all different roles. And this is an ever-changing field. You also need to understand the technologies that are out there and how they play out. That's more for the longer term. You don't want to be leapfrogged by somebody. It just takes a lot of detailed work in everything, in technology, in organization, in culture, to get a fully functioning AI team that your CEO can look at you and say, wow, I feel that this team really, really contributes to what we're doing, and I'm so happy that we're investing here. That's, my advice is take all the factors, spend some time understanding things, and then make key decisions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Great. We're back with Vanya for live questions. I'm looking here at the top. First question: over the next 5 years, in your opinion, what would be the most impactful applications of GNNs, or graph neural networks?
Yeah, my hope with GNNs is that they will simply make things simpler for the users of AI. That we'll be able to automate a lot of the work that we're doing today in AI, specifically feature selection, model tuning, and so on. I think this technology lends itself a little bit better than other technologies for this type of automation, popularly known as AutoML. I also feel that, the flexible kind of network structure and tuning should eventually result in simpler ways of doing ML. So that's my biggest hope from this technology.
Okay, great. Any insights into the great debate about responsible AI? How much do we need to enforce guardrails around AI?
I think every technology and technology at this scale, and specifically AI, which I said is one of the most important technology now, has a social impact, and we need to be very, very careful and understand that social impact. So it's something that is definitely we should worry about. And I'm not talking about Terminator-style scenarios of future takeovers of AI. I'm more talking about how does it impact different populations? How does it impact people across the globe? What kind of society it will produce? Because it does change the society and how it works. I think that's tremendously, tremendously important work. And it's something that we all think, but I think, you can never think too much about this, because the world is large, and the impacts are sometimes subtle initially and change over time slowly. And those changes are harder to detect from once. Yeah, but we definitely all need to think about it.
Yeah, Vanya, related to that, there's been I guess a question around the research group within these big tech companies. Often this was a conversation that came up with Margaret Mitchell a couple of days ago here at Transform, who obviously is former Google researcher, and talking about the need for a better two-way communications, somehow elevating those researchers or those concerns around ethical AI, so that it's not just the product team running fast and hot on the latest cool technology. Any thoughts around how companies should structure their teams?
I mean, I think to step back a little bit, and if you look at the Valley, I think I spent most of my career in those places, as I said, where that were content and ads, maybe powered models. And when I came outside of that domain to Airbnb, I kind of realized that almost the bulk of this cloud technology that we see out there, including things like MapReduce, Kafka, TensorFlow to some extent, they are very kind of tailored to this advertising use case when you have huge order of very simple events, right? So it's like this, whatever happened in the Silicon Valley and the companies that came, they influenced the actual technology that we developed across. And so that indicates that the same thing for AI. I think the context of where the research is done, as well as the context of the time when we're doing this and what are the larger trends in the industry, definitely influence how we think about technology. So there is some risk of a bias here, and I think that we need to be very, very, very different biases. I mean, from many different ways, and some of it is unavoidable. We need to go with eyes wide open, and make sure that the work we are doing kind of fits larger frame and not only the particular place where it's done. And that is hard. That is hard. It's hard to step back and look at those things. I don't have a single silver bullet to understand, how we should organize this. But I think it's something on everybody, on many leaders' minds these days, to make sure that we have that wider context.
Great. There's a couple more questions. 1 minute left. Maybe we can keep these brief. Maybe I can't get to both of them, but let's try. What are the risks of enterprises leading step changes in technology versus academia-led innovations?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I think that relates to the previous answer I gave. Is that context that the company provides sometimes influences how we think about things, from the size of data that we are processing. I mean, machine learning and AI is hard with little data. We have a lot of methods that work with a lot of data, and that's partially a legacy of the last 20 years of the web and everything else, where we actually were able to collect a lot of data. And so, and if you do work in companies that have that data, we are more likely to build systems that work on a lot of data. Yeah. So 12 seconds left, Matt. I think it's too late for the.
I think unfortunately we're out of time. I'd love to keep going, but Vanya, thank you very much for joining us at Transform today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks to everybody for listening to the talk.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks very much to Vanya and Matt, and special thanks to Vanya for stepping in as our timekeeper just then. That was awesome. We're going to take a short break right now. We encourage you to check out our one-to-one networking platform. It's right down there, and our VB Boss pages. Coming up after the break, I'm really looking forward to this. We're going to have our Best of Transform Executive Summary with our VentureBeat expert panel, as well as our AI Innovation Awards and Women in AI Awards. We'll be right back in 15 minutes. That's at 10:20 Pacific. Of course, if you want to know what that is in your local time, you know by now to look at your agenda. We'll see you soon.
Your fragmented data is causing problems. Customers are interacting with your brand across an ever-increasing number of touchpoints, while your company is using more solutions and vendors than ever before. But the data being collected is disconnected and doesn't speak the same language. Each new technology handles data differently and in its own silo, so you have to set up rules, audiences, and definitions over and over again in every tool, every time, creating incomplete insights for your business and inconsistent experience for your customers. The demand for a single view of the customer has never been greater. Fortunately, a solution is here, and it's simple. Telium's Customer Data Hub starts by capturing data at the source. Telium integrates with every customer touchpoint, whether it's a digital or in-person experience. We then combine this known and anonymous customer data and enrich it based on your business rules to create a unified and portable view of your customers that every team member and vendor can utilize with consistency and clarity. Analysts can gain insights. Marketers can engage customers at the right time with the right programs. And your brand can truly put the customer at the center of its strategy. That's the Customer Data Hub. It transforms your fragmentation into a foundation that handles data securely, honors customer privacy, and gives you the power to collect, unify, and understand your most valuable resource. And with over 1,000 turnkey integrations, act with speed and clarity. Let Telium turn your data into the fuel that powers your overall business and puts your customer back at the heart of everything you do.
Tamer partners with leading organizations across the globe to master their data at scale to drive marketing and sales, lower spend, or reduce risk. Our cloud-native data mastering solutions use human-guided machine learning to connect thousands of internal and external data sources in weeks or months instead of years. The result is comprehensive, up-to-date records of customers, products, suppliers, and more to drive analytical outcomes at unprecedented scale. Are you ready to modernize your MDM solution?
Hi there. I'm Sam, your guide to Soul Machines. How are you doing?
Soul Machines is an autonomous animation company that has built the world's first digital brain. It enables human-like face-to-face interactions that are personal, empathetic, and interactive in exactly the same way that our human brain animates us and brings us to life when we interact with each other.
So what's important about this human operating system is it providing a connection between artificial intelligence and people, but even more importantly, it's creating this connection between people and artificial intelligence. So as we explore the potential for this, people can put this technology to work in a way that redefines their business, redefines what is possible for their customers, for their clients, for their industry. And we're moving into an era where we're going to spend more and more of our time interacting with artificial intelligence, with robots and other forms of automated machinery. And the core concept behind what we do and the technology we deliver is, wouldn't all of those machines be more useful to us as humans if they were more like us? Literally, Soul Machines puts a face on artificial intelligence. I mean, it adds the human qualities of emotional intelligence to the AI systems, and it means we can interact with artificial intelligence in an incredibly human-like way.
Soul Machines digital people provide a safe and engaging way to connect brands and customers. We are creating mind-blowing experiences like Nestle's Cookie Couch, Bull's Skincare Advisor, WHO's Florence Healthcare Expert, and entertainment twins like will.i.am and more. Soul Machines digital people are helping companies all over the world and in multiple industries. Soul Machine's autonomous animation is continually evolving to include more complex interactions with content and the world around us. Soul Machines, astonishing digital people.
We had a blank page and we had to invent every aspect of the system. Imagine that you have to build a car. Here we had to build everything, right? We have to put the wheels, do the engine, the interior, the design, and every piece of that technology, we had to rebuild it, for the cloud.
And I love technology because the limit is your brain, your imagination, there is no physical limit to what you can do.
Technology is changing fast, and the skills you and your company need to keep up are in short supply. But with Skillsoft, you can drive project success by equipping your team with future-ready skills. DevOps, security, cloud, data, and more. Through Skillsoft Percipio, you get labs and boot camps to accelerate learning, skills and role-based paths to retain your best talent, and leadership skills that drive tech projects forward. Future-proof your team today with Skillsoft.
Labelbox is the leading training data platform for teams to annotate data, manage people and processes, and iterate on results in a single location. Designed for speed and precision, we support image, video, text, and tiled geospatial data. Labelbox uses automatic task distribution and active learning to easily prioritize labeling the most important data. We are trusted by Fortune 500 enterprises as well as leading companies fueled by AI. What breakthrough will you make with Labelbox? Try it for free today.
Self-service is awesome when it works. But when it doesn't work, customers often have to start over with a live agent, which wastes valuable time. But there's good news for businesses today. Artificial intelligence has significantly advanced the synthesizing and understanding of human speech. Using modern compute availability, artificial intelligence algorithms examine call data and generate models that have massively improved the ability to understand human speech and generate realistic voices. These technologies have made it considerably easier to deploy high-quality voice-based self-service applications. By using AI, Five9 Intelligent Virtual Agent can resolve a broad set of customer tasks. If self-service fails to resolve an issue, the customer's information and context is passed directly to an agent with an action plan. So the agent and customer can pick up where they left off with the virtual agent without wasting time. Virtual Agent improves the customer experience and lets agents spend more time helping customers with challenging issues. Talk to us today to learn how Five9 Intelligent Virtual Agent, part of Five9 Genius AI, can improve operational costs while delivering a more human experience.
Data is growing at an exponential rate. The amount of data created over the next 3 years will begin to surpass the data created over the last 30 years. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. In the next 5 years, the world will create more than 3 times the data in the previous 5. In 2019, The Economist found that data was estimated to be worth close to $8 trillion in the global economy. Leading enterprises are leveraging data as a driver for growth. Companies that scale artificial intelligence and machine learning beyond proof of concepts to company-wide execution at scale average a 32% lift in valuation relative to price to earnings and price to sales ratios. Leaders know the stakes are high, so they're committing executive attention to accelerating progress. Organizations that have achieved the highest levels of data scalability, data portability, and AI-ready infrastructure today are 4 times more likely than those lagging behind to have both a data strategy and a chief data officer. For 8 out of 10 business leaders, data strategy is a board-level conversation. Leaders power winning strategies with reactive, event-driven, data-rich digital experiences. They're also 6 times more likely to be deploying what we call the modern data stack, using Apache Cassandra, Kubernetes, Kafka, Spark, and Elasticsearch. And by embracing the modern data stack and committing executive attention, a majority of today's leaders attribute more than 10% of revenue to data and analytics. So embrace the stack. Seize the opportunity. Go farther and faster with data stacks.
Life isn't always simple, but tracking your spending can be. Capital One credit card customers have easy ways to track spending, like notifications when new or unexpected charges are detected, so you can sit back and relax. Capital One is always looking out for you and your money.
AI is improving the world. But successful deployments are not easy, and only 20% of AI projects see the light of day. With the right partner, you can deploy at more than 3 times that rate. The key to confidently deploying world-class AI is working with reliable, high-quality training data. For over 20 years, we've been the data partner for leading tech, automotive, financial services, healthcare, retail and commerce companies, as well as for nonprofit organizations and government institutions. Our customers enjoy the most cost-effective, highest ROI approach to train their AI models. Delivering quality training data on time and on budget is just the start of how we do that. We offer the most diverse, scalable labeling options across data types, languages, dialects, and security requirements. Our expertise and technology help us deliver world-class training data with fewer judgments and faster annotations. And most importantly, you get to do things your way. You can choose our managed service solution where we partner with your team, or your team can choose our platform and professional service option to annotate data at scale. Either way, we'll connect you to our global crowd of over 1 million skilled contributors that speak over 180 languages and dialects, covering over 130.
Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a nice break, managed to get a stretch, maybe some snacks. Of course, do some networking and check out our expo area and VB Boss and everything else we have on offer for you. And of course, being me, I hope you got some caffeine. I know I did. So next up, I'm really looking forward to this. This is our Best of Transform Executive Summary. So please welcome VentureBeat's Harry Sivraman, Famida Rashid, Kyle Wiggers, Sage Lazaro, and Matt Marshall. What a stellar team. Please take it away.
Hello, everybody. So welcome to the Best of Transform, where our VB editors share the highlights of the roughly 60 sessions from this week. I'm Matt Marshall, founder and CEO of VentureBeat. Now, we've been covering many of the talks on VentureBeat because we aspire to be the leading site covering this story around data, technology, and strategy. But this session is where you get to hear directly from the VentureBeat editors about what caught our attention. So let me introduce the panelists. We have Famida Rashid, our executive editor, Sage Lazaro, a senior reporter, and Kyle Wiggers, our senior AI writer, and Hari Sivaraman, our head of AI and data content strategy. and who led the content recruitment around Transform, with myself assisting. Thank you all for joining me. Team, we had a bunch of C-level execs from at least 30 Fortune 1000 brands, big tech companies like Google and Amazon, but also more traditional companies, Levi Strauss, Nordstrom, Nestle, Pizza Hut, Chipotle, Procter & Gamble, Nike, Visa, MasterCard, Goldman Sachs, Kohl's, Honeywell. I could go on. We had big speakers like Vince Cerf and Tom Davenport, Margaret Mitchell. So I want to jump right in. I felt that one of the biggest conversations at Transform was around responsible AI. Now, AI is powerful, but when it goes wrong, it can have a negative side effect. One area that we talked about is large language data sets, which can create automated speech. But there's a debate around how responsible it is because much of the data it relies upon is what it finds on the web and elsewhere, which isn't necessarily a fair representation. So a growing group of experts are critical of the tendency by some tech companies to use this tech just because it's cool without giving the foresight around the dangers. So a few months ago, Google fired one of its leaders in responsible AI, Margaret Mitchell. So look at what Margaret tells me about this. She says the firing itself is an example of this lack of foresight. Roll the clip.
If you were to ask me before they fired Tim Neat, how would this go? I would have said, this is going to be harmful to the brand. It's going to create tons of news articles and backlash, and it's going to be something that will be associated to other mistakes that you've made, and so sort of stay within the lore of the company. And then when they fired me, I think that even further shows their sort of idea of saying sort of mean things publicly didn't work for them, but that wasn't obvious, obviously, because they made the sort of decision to do what they did. And so it's sort of an unfortunate example of exactly what the problem is, where you're looking at this very single moment in time, not thinking about the social context, not thinking about these repercussions and domino effects long term.
Yeah, great. I had some feedback on my side, but hopefully you all didn't hear that. It was a profound interview where she touched on other key things, for example, working from within to affect change and the importance of that rather than resigning to the temptation of thinking you need to work from outside. And the importance of two-way communication, where sometimes researchers are lower on the totem pole than the product leads, and so therefore aren't able to put the guardrails around some of these projects as much as she thinks there should be. Anyway, anyone else from the team hear examples of this need for thoughtfulness across the 5 days of Transform?
Yeah, Matt, I'm going to jump in there. And there are a couple of talks that really caught my attention. One was from one of my favorite speakers, Yakaira Nunes from Salesforce, who had a quote which stuck with me. She said that when you're building AI, it's very, very important to put guardrails right at the outset. Otherwise, it's like a game of chase, if you will, as opposed to a game of tennis. So that I think is very, very pertinent. Right at the outset, be thoughtful. Have that foresight that you just mentioned, that Margaret brought up. The other speaker that really caught my attention today morning actually was Vanya, who said that a lot of the AI projects or the AI innovation is actually being led by industries, led by large corporations as opposed to academia, which was historically the case. So, that makes me think, obviously enterprises would first think about profit versus anything else. So perhaps do we need to have a good balance between these two is something that I think of.
Yeah, I want to actually add in, this wasn't one of the sessions I moderated, but the University of Oxford Professor Davenport, he was talking about how if we don't think about how AI is being used, if we don't have responsible guidelines, then we might end up where AI is being used to ration who gets healthcare or set prices on how much you have to pay to get healthcare. And he called it scary. And we have to do something about that. And that really resonated with me. The fact that he specifically pulled out a actual harm that all of us can relate to. On one of the sessions, I did talk with McAfee, where Celeste was basically like, you can't have 100% accuracy. That was a little surprising to me because, you know, we kind of want to think that we can do everything perfectly. So the fact that she was very blunt, like, nope, we can't do this perfectly, was also a little eye-opening.
Great. Anyone else on that point before we move on? So without leaving ethics, in another conversation with Bridget Fry, CTO of Redfin, she talked with me about the advantages of a diverse team. In one example, Redfin was building an automated home tour scheduling feature. The AI algorithm had a ton of complexity because you had to make sure that the customer and the agent were available to view the home, but also that the home was available. So when Redfin first shipped this automatic touring algorithm, it just didn't work and no one used it. So they tried a bunch of things and she changed up the team. And listen to what Bridget says happened next.
And then we decided to reform the team. And it happened to be that the new team that we put on it was more gender diverse. And it was striking how different the approach was that this team took. Almost from the first minute they were working on the problem, they said, let's stop coding. Let's start listening. And they did a listening tour where they run around to different markets. They spent time with real estate agents and they tried to figure out, you know, what were the actual problems. Like, let's not assume that we as engineers know exactly how to solve everything. And that different approach led to, you know, some changes to the software, and we put it out again, adoption tripled.
It's this idea of listening. Bridget says later after that they measured the impact of that touring algorithm after the revision, and it generated $30 million in additional revenue over 18 months. But the companies continued to use it, and so the value, of course, continues to accrue. Now, Bridget admits that gender diversity may not have been the only thing that contributed to the success. She doesn't know how she could prove that. But she said that it's something she's observed over and over again, that more diverse teams have to spend more time listening and understanding each other. And so they end up giving better results because of that diversity. Anyone else hear examples about needing to listen in AI?
So I'm going to bring up Yakira, since Hari already mentioned her in the previous conversation. But Yakira from Salesforce was saying the same thing, that before you start on a project, you have to make sure that your team itself is already reflecting the diversity that you need. So you have to think about it. It's a very deliberate process. So it has to be right from the beginning a conscious choice on who you have, what viewpoints you're bringing in. I thought that was also very similar to the entire idea of listening to each other.
Yeah, I also, Matt, I agree with what Famda just said. I think Dr. Melvin Greer also in today morning session brought up the same point, that because you have a diverse team, you will necessarily have people that think about the same problem in different ways, which means that when you come up with a solution, it'll be a solution that works for everybody, not just for a set of people.
Yeah, and I think there was also a sense of the need for education. Yakira brought it up, and others did, right, around needing to actually have this in upper education. Did you folks hear about that as well in terms of upskilling, needing that as an early part of education culturally in this field?
Yes, I think in that BIPOC breakfast, I can't remember whether it was Yakira or Huma who brought up that point, that during the education process itself, what if we sensitize students that are learning about data science, about what diversity and inclusion means, right? What are the various parameters of it? What are the things that you need to be cognizant of going forward while you're building?
Yeah,
Kyle,
Katya Walsh said something similar as well, where she stuck with the team she already had because they already knew the business, they already knew how to work with each other, and she gave them the education and upskilled them on the AI side.
Yeah, that was something we socialized after that talk. I tweeted it out because it was hard to believe. 8 weeks boot camp. She puts people with no coding experience through, and out they become machine learning practitioners. She had to have 43 people pass on the day of her talk, which was just a couple of days ago. But quite an industry first, if I understand that correctly. Kyle, you talked a little bit about the data center automation, some of the data prep that's necessary there. Any parallels there in terms of the need to educate and prep there?
Yeah, I mean, I think Famina was essentially talking about the need for representative data in, when developing and deploying a machine learning system or considering doing so. So Shane Jason Mock, who spoke on another panel, we'll talk about it more in detail during this roundtable. He's the VP of R&D at American Fidelity, and they implemented a lot of RPA solutions there to help speed up back office tasks. But he was talking about the importance of collecting data such that it's representative of all stakeholders, and then prepping and normalizing that data, which tends to be an arduous process. And it's so important that when you're doing that, when you're engaged in that process, that you involve all the people that this system will eventually touch, this machine learning system. We've seen countless examples and heard about countless examples during Transform where that wasn't done, right? And the resulting system maybe had some bias or unwanted prejudice, unfortunately, because the data set was imbalanced and the development process was not really inclusive, and maybe there was a missing education component. So certainly, I agree with my fellow panelists here that that is such a key point in the roadmap, or should be for any company considering adopting AI of really any form. AI is powerful, but also has limitations and can reflect problems that exist in the data set if those problems aren't sufficiently mitigated or addressed in some way.
Another theme that came up over and over again is this idea of technical debt. If you don't label the data from the get-go, you need to be making sure it's fair and inclusive from the beginning. If you're going to have AI projects, you need to have an actual layer in your stack that enforces this. So Jeremy King, who's the head of engineering at Pinterest, talked with me about this being a model they've used for several years. And he thought it could be a model for other companies to be using. So roll the clip.
But we think about it from a technical standpoint as the inclusive AI layer just being another part of the platform. So we think about our data infrastructure and our core products and our product teams up in front, but this whole layer here, we think about not only as a team that the organization can go to, but also part of the platform. And if you make it part of the platform, then you have a better chance of making sure that any product you release will be inclusive from the beginning.
Yeah, so right there you see a clip or a slide of Jeremy's organization there, and he talks later around inclusive AI being right in the middle there. So you've got your product teams at the front, for example, but it's actually a layer in their architecture. Team, did any of you hear other examples of companies doing this?
Sorry, Matt, you were muted. Can you just repeat the question if you don't mind?
Am I off mute?
Now you are.
Sorry about that. Not sure what happened. The question is, with Jeremy King at Pinterest saying that there's actually a layer of within the architecture that's focused on responsible AI. Just wondering if any of you heard something similar from the conversations around Transform from other companies.
Yeah, I mean, I can jump in here. So this is about the bias in the data. It's something which is a theme that has come up quite a bit. If you see, I mean, in last year's Transform, I remember there was a case about facial recognition, right? Where that's something which comes up very obviously, very easily. And obviously, it's a technology that has been very controversial. People are trying to now course correct by making sure that they announce the bias in the data or correct the bias in the data, at least be very, very transparent about how the bias in the data came about and what are the things that you're doing to correct it. But it's a theme that has come across a lot of chats where I believe that people are very, very cognizant of it now, which is a good thing, I suppose. But sometimes I feel that the bias in the data can be very subtle, which you don't even realize till the time that it becomes too late. For example, there's this famous case which was very well publicized about the Amazon recruiting tool, which they found out was biased against women because the bias was in the data, right? So they took a million resumes of successful candidates, a million resumes of unsuccessful candidates, fed that into a deep learning model, which threw out some results. But what they didn't realize that inherent within that data was a lot of bias that the hiring managers perhaps had towards those candidates. So I think it's very, very important. It's a theme that's come across a lot. But I think the good news is that a lot of organizations are now very, very conscious about it.
Yeah, we talked Dr. Greer this morning from Intel, the chief scientist, talked about the need to actually label and ensure the integrity of data from the get-go, from very step one. Otherwise, you have this significant debt that keeps building up. So that's an element of having that architectural layer to make sure you have responsible AI. And Yakaira, you keep going back to Yakaira, who from Salesforce, who set up her own team to try to enforce this, and she's realizing, we'll come back to her later on in this conversation, I think, but basically there's so much running through, so much data that she just can't get to and prove that there's a second strategy, which is just risk mitigation, risk management. But she volunteered to the team the step of having something called consequential scanning, but it's an entirely optional project within the AI team's workflow, and it's not quite mandatory. Anyway, not quite an architecture that's actually enforced inside the workflow, but another example of this.
So it wasn't about bias specifically, but Orange Theory, Kajaruni, he was talking about how companies they know data is important, so they're collecting everything. But his specific point was you still need to make sure you do some work to make the data usable. So labeling, understanding what you have, giving context, that was something he emphasized was important, because otherwise you just have a lot of noise.
Sage, we heard a lot about keeping people at the center of AI at Transform. What did you hear at the event?
Yeah, so the conversations I had made clear that it can't just be about optimization. There are real people on the other ends of these tools and services which can have massive impacts on their lives. For example, I spoke with Stan Humphreys, the Chief Analytics Officer at Zillow, about how their users are actually making some of the biggest decisions they ever will using the company's platforms, right? They're buying and selling their homes, and in some cases, they're even selling their homes to Zillow itself through Zillow offers. So a black box isn't exactly comforting in these scenarios. And Stan said this was an evolution. The company originally focused on just pure prediction, and then they decided they really needed to be able to easily explain how the products works in just a conversation with somebody. So now the company moved toward explainable AI, and they really view this as the driver of the features and the business overall.
So let's roll the clip of Stan Humphreys from Zillow.
Once we started into a newer part of our business called Zillow Offers, where we're purchasing people's homes directly from sellers, it became, I think, a little bit more important for us to not just have high accuracy, but also be able to explain these results in a conversation with a person, like a real estate agent typically does.
Yeah, and this point of there being real people on the other end of these AI and data powered tools also came up a lot during my conversation with Ken Dodelin, who heads up the conversational AI and messaging products at Capital One. And we were talking about the company's customer service bot, Eno, which uses natural language understanding. And he really emphasized that a customer interacting with it may be in a moment of extreme stress, and financial stress can be really serious, and they need to make sure the tone and the language is appropriate, and that this all modifies how the conversation is going to go. So overall, I think it's about the fact that people have to stay top of mind. They can't be the afterthought here.
Anybody else on this point about keeping people at the center of AI projects? Kyle, we could move to RPA, which is a continuation of this theme. Tell us about your conversations around RPA, which stands for robotic process automation, and which has to do with the massive automation that some companies are engaged in. But it can be a scary term. It has the robotic term in it. Kyle.
Yeah, sure. I didn't want to preempt the discussion about this. We have a script here, and this is a nice segue, actually. Again, as I mentioned, Jason Shane Mock, VP of R&D at American Fidelity, a company, again, that has implemented RPA to speed up a lot of its back office and customer-facing tasks, for that matter, was talking about how it might be difficult for some companies to implement RPA in a way that augments human workers, or at least is complementary to the work that humans do, as opposed to, they don't, obviously no company wants RPA to replace human workers, and it's not. The misconception is that it's kind of taking over from a human workforce, but in fact, the things that RPA is doing are monotonous, they're time consuming. They're not adding a ton of value to any business division. They're simply a time sink in many cases. And these are tasks like analyzing contracts for certain language, automating warehouse fulfillment. They rely on natural language processing, optical character recognition, a lot of fundamental AI technologies. But the crux here is these are tasks that would take the average human worker hours and hours every week, when there is more high-value work they could be doing. So RPA is simply, in many cases, enabling human workers to focus on those more important tasks that are of value, rather than staring at spreadsheets for days on end, copying and pasting text from files. But to get to the earlier point, there has to be education, certainly. When you roll out something like RPA, it is a pretty nebulous term, and many, everyone from the C-suite to engineering departments might not necessarily know what the implications are, what it means. And there has to be documentation. There has to be some sort of workshop component so that everyone's on board and knows that what RPA is really is software robots that are programmed to do specific tasks using AI, yes, and they're highly capable and scalable. But they can't do everything. They certainly can't replace, a knowledge worker. They're very specialized and good at what they do, but not necessarily artificial general intelligence, not by a long shot. So it's so important, Jason was saying, to get everyone on board, make sure that there's a smooth transition process when an RPA platform is rolled out widely. So that there's not resistance. I've read a couple of surveys from consultancies that show that sometimes companies run into roadblocks initially because workers they're a little bit afraid of RPA. They don't know what it means for them. They don't know how it's going to change what they do on a daily basis. So certainly one of the key parts of a successful RPA deployment, or the deployment of any AI system for that matter, is ensuring that everyone knows what they need to know. There's full transparency and explainability, ideally. Encouragingly, it seems like more and more companies realize that now, and they're not simply forcing this down anyone's throats. They they want to make sure that everyone is engaged and there's buy-in from every level of the organization.
Right. So yeah, the overwhelming message is the RPA helps people become more powerful, able to do more. And aside, there's very, very little you can do anyway, right? Because you have to remain competitive. But let's run the clip from Jason Shane, a mock VP at American Fidelity.
I think it's really important to figure out how we work together, the robots and the humans. How are we going to work together? And I think that's the biggest challenge that we've faced, and I think organizations will continue to face over the next 5 years.
Kyle, you also talked with Honeywell. They had upward of 70 projects in their RPA program. Anything else you'd like to share on that conversation?
Yeah, certainly. So this was during the panel discussion we had earlier this week on RPA and challenges and trends. Honeywell is another company that's embracing RPA fully. An interesting point that was made from their side was that there has to be a demonstrated business application before they consider adopting something like RPA. In 70 or so cases, they found they could speed up the work that was done by humans. They found that they could add value from, for example, the warehouse side of things, where fulfillment orders were coming in, especially during the pandemic, and human workers on the fulfillment side were getting overwhelmed. The volume was something unprecedented, and RPA at scale helped to really streamline the process and ensure that Honeywell products got where they needed to go to distributors, eventually retailers, so that consumers could buy those products and expect them in a timely manner, not having, obviously at the worst, they could be waiting weeks on end for a Honeywell product, and RPA prevented that from happening. But the message here is ultimately, as you alluded to, Matt, there needs to be buy-in, right? I mean, if the C-suite doesn't understand RPA or what it can do for them, maybe they should do some thorough research and investigation and talk with challenges that employees might have and that RPA could potentially solve before pursuing it. But thankfully, as I mentioned a second ago, I think companies are understanding this. They don't want to invest a lot of money in a product that's not going to do much for them or add much value. So they're doing the legwork from what I can see. Honeywell and American Fidelity, certainly did, and they're making sure that these deployments are equitable and augment as opposed to replace any of the human workforce, and are ultimately drive it and are successful by every of their metrics.
Great, thanks, Kyle. Now, I wanted to move on to another big conversation we have kept hearing over and over again: building versus buying. A big decision for executives at this part of the cycle, where it's no longer super immature, where you need to AI is not super immature, where you need to rely totally on rent or buy models, but you can start building it yourself. Sage, what did you hear at the event about this?
Yeah. So this came up during my conversation with Paul Gaffney, who's the Chief Technology and Supply Chain Officer at Kohl's. And that was a really great conversation. He really pulled back the curtain on the company's decision-making processes, particularly when it comes to the use of data and machine learning and its digital sourcing optimizer tool, which it developed for the supply chain. And he explained that when they set out to do that and integrate machine learning into the supply chain a few years ago, they decided to buy ultimately. And he said they just felt like they weren't there yet themselves. And buying seemed like a great way to learn from others' mistakes, to get some experience, get their feet wet. It makes sense. But now, I think it's been about 3 years, and now that they have more knowledge and more experience, he explained they're starting to feel some drawbacks there. There's a black box aspect to it. They want more control over their platform.
Let's roll the clip.
We felt at the time that that was a great way for us to kind of leverage mistakes that others had already made, get our feet wet, get experienced with actually operating this. And we're now at the point, so we've now been doing this for 3 years, and we've been seriously exercising the trade-offs in our optimization space for close to a year now. We're now stepping back and saying, hey, there are some decisions inside of these engines that are really kind of black box to us. And we'd like to be able to influence them a little bit more.
Yeah, well, obviously, Sage, that was a great example of a more traditional company, Kohl's, needing to get up to speed. But every single company has a different equation, right? A different calculation on when to buy versus build, and it can change over time, and it can differ depending on which product they're building. But anybody else here of interesting insights around build versus buy in 2021?
So when I was speaking with Celeste from McAfee, one of the things, we weren't talking about build and buy specifically, but one thing she mentioned from a security standpoint is when you're buying things, you don't have control over that security profile. You are depending on the person you're buying from to make sure the security is built in, that they're keeping up with security. So I thought that was a very interesting insight that we don't always think about when we have the build and buy conversation.
I'd also like to bring up the chat that I had with the Nordstrom CTO, Edmund Mesrobian, who was talking about how they found out that the products that were there currently just didn't meet the breadth of needs that they had. Nordstrom, as we all know, is famous for excellence in customer service. So they needed something that was really, really powerful in terms of analyzing what the customers really wanted. So, it's really, there's no one size fits all. You really have to figure out what works best for your organization. And perhaps there was, Amin Kazroni also brought up the fact that they looked at which are the areas where we can really add value, and which are the areas which are kind of table stakes. So just buy in those areas and build in the ones where you can build competitive value.
Right. Yeah, we sometimes heard that buying or renting a cloud service and various tools sometimes don't let you move fast enough with the specifics of your industry. Comcast was another example where their lead executive talked about having to reevaluate renting and buying things externally just because of the voice control that they needed to their remote, right? They needed to launch, and they just realized there wasn't enough industry specific development for them, and so they needed to actually go build it. But there was a specific time that they actually did it.
He was talking about an example that they found where just asking a customer asking, show me CNN, they found out that a customer could ask that in 20,000 different ways. So imagine the complexity of that. So there was no existing product that met that kind of requirement.
Yeah, that's right. And I think, then there was a second example of, show me my bill, and it was like 100,000 different ways. So Comcast figured it needed control. This is something we kept hearing, this tension between speed and care. So Accenture, sponsor of the event, I think it was they were pretty heavy on the second day around data. Had these big trends that they were releasing in some reports, but basically saying that the new time frame is 6 months. Right? They kept hearing from business executives, "Hey, I need it faster. 6 months is the new time frame." You can't move in 6 months if you're building, right? So then you buy, but then as Famina said, you've got all this risk underneath. So you need to make sure at some point you slow down and make sure you really know what you're doing with those data sets. And Capgemini, sponsor of the first day, issued a report on that day that continued to talk about how companies with data experts to spend time really working on their workforce to upskill them just do so much better on revenue and profit per individual. They tracked it down per worker. So those folks who were actually data knowledgeable were vastly more profitable and generated more revenue, interestingly. And those companies that shared their data with their community did really well. So again, just reinforcing this need to move fast and that the benefits accrue to those people who really actually do this stuff. Anything else there before we move on?
Yeah, maybe I just wanted to add on this point. Oh, apologies.
Yep, go ahead, Kyle.
Just wanted to add to Famada's point. It's something I heard during the RPA discussion as well. Honeywell was saying, you have these disparate systems that are secure in and of themselves, but when you start to connect them, security holes and challenges might pop up. That's especially true when you're using a third-party RPA platform, for example. All of a sudden, this data that in isolation would not have been sensitive or considered sensitive can now be correlated with other information, other data from other systems that might reveal something sensitive or compromising about a business operation. So just wanted to reemphasize it is really important that the research is thorough, the groundwork is there before companies considering, especially adopting third-party solutions to solve some of these technical problems.
Yeah, that's great. And there's some really inspirational stories too. I think it was Five9 talked about working with a COVID care call center, and they didn't have enough people to actually man the phones, and so they used an intelligent virtual assistant to actually route people who were calling in to get appointments and other urgent matters that actually potentially actually saved lives. So again, another example of where you sometimes simply need to buy to move forward before you can actually take the time to go build it yourself. And anything else before we move forward to security? Okay, Famada, you're our in-house security expert. You were lucky you had a chance to talk with Vint Cerf, who's often been called the co-father of the internet, co-founder. What did you take away from that conversation? Let's run the clip first.
Of course, we have to give people the tools in order to make themselves safer. We can't just say it's all on you. We have to make it easy. So we don't want security to become such a burden that people reject using it.
So what Vint Cerf said about security conversation being ongoing really stuck with me. It's not about setting up tech. It's not training users to the right thing. It's security as a progression. And the key, though, is, as he said in that clip, we can't keep making security the enemy. We can't have rules and then say, tut, tut, why didn't you do what we told you? Like zero trust, which is the big thing right now, which is assuming that everything is untrusted and dangerous and putting security controls around it to make sure that you're authenticated and you're authorized. You can't make it hard to do, or people are just going to look for ways to get around it. And I'd like to hear from him one more time. So roll the clip.
Enforcement is a strong word, and I really believe it's a useful one here. Incentives to behave well are also an interesting possibility.
And to go back to that tut-tut thing, so I asked him how we should enforce zero trust. And he said, no. We get better security when there are incentives to do certain things. And again, that really struck me that instead of yelling at people, we should be working with people to make it easier, more helpful.
Yeah, we've been hearing about that that need for these service providers providing tools, not just to provide tools and wash their hands of responsibility, for understanding the innards of these products, but they have to actually ship it in a way to ensure that the people using these products actually know how they're doing it. And we've had example after example on VentureBeat. We did a review, I think it was a couple months ago, of a leading workflow tool from Amazon, where our researchers really had hard time reading the documentation around SageMaker, and just found it was very difficult to understand where in that product they needed to slow down and take care of some of these more responsible AI considerations. So again, just something in full debate right now. Anything else on Vint Cerf's conversation, Famina, before we move on?
I mean, just that it's amazing how much like he is deliberate about security. He is very conscious about the fact that we need to keep the end user in mind. Doesn't matter what we're trying to do, it's the user. It kind of goes back to what we were saying earlier, right? We have to keep people at the center of all the security conversations.
Famina, what else did you hear about our security data and AI that was significant?
So I got to talk to Jamie Tomasello from Gusto about how to think about security when we're working with all this data that's going into AI technology. So, I mean, these applications like AI Assistant, they consume a lot of data. So again, what is the chain of custody? Who has access to it? How is it being used? How are the processes set up to clean it and add context? We have to think about the repercussions of who uses it. So roll the clip.
From the EFF, what do I want to protect? Who do I want to protect it from? How bad are the consequences if I fail? How likely is it that I will need to protect it? And how much trouble am I willing to go through to try to prevent potential consequences? When we think about who we want to protect in particular, we need to think about not only our company or our data as the target. As you were saying, we need to also be thinking about our customers or our users as the target. For example, think about how an AI bot could reveal information about a domestic violence or a stalking victim to an attacker and what the impact could be.
Famina, can you tell us what Jamie did and or does at Gusto, and again, maybe for our viewers, what does Gusto do?
So Gusto is an HR platform. Jamie is in charge of the compliance and data governance programs at Gusto. So her job is literally thinking about who is accessing what data and how, and all of the questions about protecting people. One of the things we talked about was, organizations don't own that data. It belongs to the users. And that's literally her job, to think about how do you make sure you were good stewards of the product, of the data, I mean. And so the quote that we just heard from her, she's talking about threat modeling, which is kind of, to be honest, a boring thing if you think about it, because it's something you have to do. It's not sexy, it's not exciting. It's literally, okay, think about every worst case scenario. How do we handle it? What do we do? And it's so essential for security teams to do it with their product teams, with their business teams, but nobody wants to do it because, again, it's just such a tedious exercise, but it's so critical. And one of the things I wanted to actually point out, like when she was talking about threat modeling, is, it's easy to say, oh, we don't use sensitive data, so we don't have to think about it. But if somebody using your application, your AI assistant, enters the sensitive data, even though they're not supposed to, because people make mistakes, you have to have a plan on dealing with that. Or you have basically exposed yourself. You've actually caused risk to yourself as a business because you didn't consider that somebody might use the application in a wrong way, not maliciously, but by mistake. So like threat modeling is just so important. And I was really appreciative that she really boiled down that conversation to that.
The reason I was smiling was when Pramita brought up how it's not the sexiest thing. I remembered Dr. Melvin Greer today mornings talking about how sexy he's looking.
The sexy data scientist that his wife recognizes that when she walks in the door. Yeah. So, Hari, you talked to Vodafone about edge and security. There was, or I don't think you talked, but there was a conversation around Vodafone and edge. And yesterday, quite a bit of time spent on the edge. And anything, team Hari, on Vodafone or others in terms of what you took away from that?
Yeah, I think one of the things that they brought up was the proliferation of IoT devices. Just so huge. In fact, it's said that in the next 5 years, 80% of all AI will run on the edge, which means that there's running on the device or on the telecom edge, if you will. So that's a lot of different devices, which means a lot of different endpoints, which are then opening up vulnerabilities to the enterprise security itself, right? So they were talking about how we need to be really, really mindful and thoughtful about what kind of devices we put and connect to the network, and how do we make sure that the security of those devices are taken care of, so the security of the network is not compromised.
Yeah, that was a good conversation. I think DataStax was a sponsor of that day, where they have a product that serves those needs at the edge. We also had a conversation from McAfee around
Correct.
this.
Yeah, she used the word.
And
Famida, I think you were the moderator of that conversation. She used the word brittle, how all of these endpoints, IoT devices are really, really brittle, and therefore how you need to be doubly conscious about security aspect.
Great. So why don't we move on to BIPOC? Famida, you led a breakfast conversation around BIPOC and AI that I found really interesting. It was one of my favorite sessions. What was your takeaway there?
So the cool thing about this breakfast was that we weren't just talking about what we should do. We were actually giving practical advice, practical steps to do. We were talking about how you create the team. Yakira from Salesforce was talking about the process, what you think about. And one thing that she brought up, and you kind of hinted this earlier, was that it was the risk management thing. So let's roll the clip.
Risk management strategies are my favorite. I do believe that we're moving in a direction of, in order for us to really mitigate bias, that it's going to be about risk mitigation and risk management, similar to like other areas in tech, like security, cyber threats, etc. Manage bias through risk mitigation strategies.
So Yakira was talking about what happened when you realized that, hey, we just did this, we got all this data, and we didn't do it right, that the data sources weren't diverse enough, or there were questions that we didn't think about. And that's what she said, that it was a risk management thing. If you have biased data, that is a risk to your company. So even if with your best intentions, if your data is not ideal, you need to figure out the next step. You need to have that strategy. You bring in more people, you get new data sources, or if you don't have the time or the resources to be able to do that, you set the right level expectation. You're very upfront about, hey, these are the limitations, these are the issues. Because otherwise, you're just exposing your company to a lot of risk.
And anything else, team, on the BIPOC conversation, or we'll move on. We just spent quite a bit of time on the diversity and inclusion earlier in this conversation. But anything else before we move on to the next segment? Let's turn to another topic, which is a truism that the majority of AI projects still fail. A lot of conversations at Transform about how to start and how to prepare. That was the majority of questions we saw coming in from the audience. Hari, you talked with Duke Energy's CIO where this came up. What was your takeaway?
Yeah, and Matt, if you remember, I think it was last year, I can't remember who it was, probably Kyle, because he is our most prolific writer, but there was an article which said that 87% of all AI projects never see the light of day. They fail before they hit production. So that was my question towards Bonnie, that what is your practical advice for people that are just starting off in this journey? And she said, start off keeping your expectations really, really low, right? Don't think that AI is going to be some sort of Harry Potter magic that you just wave the wand and results pop out of the other end. In fact, she was talking about their own journey where they were using computer vision, and they started off with a very low 30% accuracy level. But the important thing was they didn't just give up saying that, oh, this is not going to work, this is rubbish, right? So they iterated, they sort of MVP'd their way to scale, as they call it, right? And she reached 90% accuracy by the time they ended the project. So I think it's a very, very important lesson to make sure that you should keep your expectations low. Iterate your way towards that AI accuracy of 80-90% that people dream of.
Right, Hari. Yeah, I think that stat was from an IDC survey, if I remember correctly. But yeah, I just want to, basically agree with everything you said. I mean, I think the theme of Transform has just been, keeping expectations in check or low, however you want to phrase it. Making sure that you have the talent that you need to implement, deploy AI in a responsible manner, whether that's cloud talent, whether that's on the data science side. Ensuring that, going back to an earlier thing we touched on during this discussion, ensuring that everyone's on the same page, whether that's the people who are going to be using the tools that this AI is powering, or at the executive level, and just knowing what might come down the pipeline and how these tools might evolve in the future. That's also important for organizations to consider.
Absolutely.
I think we have a clip from Bonnie at the CIO of Duke Energy. Can we roll it?
Be okay with failing fast. I think at the beginning of the journey, we didn't have an expectation that we would get right out of the gate in our MVP, which, our minimum viable product, we'd get to that 90%. But for us, we set realistic expectations around what we think we could have gotten. And that's why I mentioned we started, we were only hitting about 40% accuracy with our information. But as time moved on and we learned and we checked and adjusted and continued to modify, we saw then that ability of that accuracy to go up.
Yeah, great conversation, Hari. Team, any other companies, traditional or less traditional, talking about this lesson of just of moving forward, iterating? I remember that question coming up, and the Tamer executive, it's a service provider on data prep, and really just reinforcing those basics. As an organization or as a unit, you need to start with the easiest possible problem that you have, right? So it's focusing on the solution, not getting distracted by what the technology can do, but really focusing on a solution that you need, starting with the easiest possible problem and the most reliable data that you have.
I think the Wayfair,
go ahead.
The Wayfair executive, Fiona, she also brought up the same theme, if you will, MVP your way to scale. So she started off with a very, very small, started off with a very, very small computer vision project within their organization, and made something that they were really super familiar with, something that they could control very, very well. And once that was successful, then they expanded the program. I think it's a very kind of obvious, cliched lesson, but at the same time, a lot of people forget it when they actually go out and try to implement AI.
Another big traditional company, Hari, you had a conversation, or maybe you can't remember who actually had the conversation, forgive me, but there was a conversation with Procter & Gamble's Chief Data and Analytics Officer. What did you like about that?
Yeah, so that wasn't me. That was Jamie, if I'm not mistaken, Jamie Fitzgibbon. But yeah, right. Again, that conversation, it was about constructively disrupting your own business. That was, in fact, the title of the talk itself. Where we've seen, history has taught us, there have been many, many huge companies, the likes of Kodak, Nokia, that were once the market leaders, and because they couldn't keep up with the times, they actually failed, or at least they couldn't achieve the kind of scale that they had achieved at one point in time. I think Procter & Gamble, being cognizant of this, almost 100 and, if I'm not mistaken, 80-year-old company, perhaps one of the biggest companies in the world, being humble enough to actually, see that as a possibility and saying that, okay, we need to think about what could happen to us before somebody else disrupts us. We're going to disrupt ourselves. going to adopt these technologies. They're transformative technologies, and therefore we are going to respect them and adopt them. And at the same time, maintain our ethos, the ethos of our organization, which is essentially serving customers very, very effectively across a broad variety of products. So I think it was a very eye-opening talk in many ways, that how they preempted a lot of these things. And when COVID hit, where all of the past data, all of the past learnings that they had are no longer relevant, how these AI and machine learning models really helped them cope with the situation. It was a classical example in my view.
Very, very interesting. Instead of hurting them, right? Because you sometimes hear, "Hey, you need to start over with the data." That's great. Let's roll the clip with Guy Perry, Chief Data and Analytics Officer of Procter & Gamble.
So Procter & Gamble is on a journey to constructively disrupt how we innovate on our products and packaging, how we communicate to our consumers, how we execute in store, and how we deliver our products via our supply chain. So each of those vectors are going through a what we call constructive disruption. We were very, very fortunate to have a very robust AI program going into the pandemic, and we leveraged every ounce of that capability during the pandemic to manage it.
Great clip. Any other lessons from traditional companies that you folks walked away with? If not, we have a couple minutes left. One of the things we've probably given short shrift to is the actual technology. We spent a lot of time with process, but maybe just we could go around and just maybe hear some of the buzzwords that some of us heard, or buzzwords. What I mean, I think obviously be hearing from our AI award nominees in a bit after this session. We'll be hearing about some of the latest cool trends in technology. But what were some of what I mean by buzzword? Less buzzword, but more the coolest technologies, or what sort of technologies came up very frequently this year? Anyone want to take a stab at jumping in?
Yeah, I can jump in. There were a couple that I think it was the data stacks speaker that brought up, which I found pretty interesting. One is TinyML, because with the proliferation of these edge computing devices, how you can potentially put everything into one tiny chip. And you talked about fog computing, where there are a bunch of these chips that are interconnected, bunch of these devices, if you will, on the edge that are interconnected, that therefore provide very high computing power. So those are the two that struck with me.
Great. We are running out low on time. Anyone else with a quick soundbite here in terms of technologies that were hot this week?
I mean, it was really exciting listening to all these companies talk about how computers and machines now understand language. So, as humans, we like to be thinking that we don't have to use gobbledygook to talk to machines, that we can just talk and they understand. So all the conversations around natural language processing were super interesting for me.
Yeah. GPT-3 large language sets was a big one. We kept hearing about. Maybe I'm going to steal your thunder, Kyle. I see you nodding. There was graph neural networks kept coming up. I mean, Vanya today, the big picture, talked about how that at scale he's seeing in the tech industry, graph neural networks being the hottest new thing. We heard about voice biometrics with I think that was the third day around NLP, right? With 5.9. But we are out of time. Any last quick words?
Generative adversarial networks as well. That was another in the security area. I think the lady from Visa, Melissa, brought that up as well.
Sage, Kyle, any last comments before we wrap up?
Yeah, I'll just say that all these discussions were really, really great, and it was great how much these technical leaders were willing to pull back the curtain and share their insights and learnings over the years, and put some good takeaways together for us all.
Absolutely, I'll make it quick. I was just amazed hearing about how capable call center automation technologies are today. They can do sentiment analysis, natural language processing, you name it. Funnel customers in from countless channels, whether it's a chatbot on a website, to an IVR system, or maybe it's an email that gets them there in the end. But it's wild, and it's been super helpful during the pandemic, obviously, as these companies undergo digital transformations. Really great to see how it's been so really helpful to these companies, no matter what industry they're in, airline industry, pharmaceutical, you name it. It seems like there's a use case for everyone, in call center automation especially.
Okay. Hey, thanks, folks, for the whirlwind tour of something like 60 sessions. I hope that was helpful to our viewers. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much to our editorial team for that amazing executive summary. So we've heard all week about all the exciting things that are now possible with AI and data analytics. We have automation to make specific business operations more efficient. Machines are getting better at understanding what we mean and want, using our language, not a programming language. We're pushing the boundaries of what is possible with technology today. But there are some innovative standouts, things that are going to transform how we use technology. And that's what the AI Innovation Awards is intended to do, to highlight some of the innovation in AI. And the nominating committee are absolutely a who's who. We have Vijay Pandey, the Vice President of Engineering and CTO of Cloud and Distributed Systems at Cisco, Rafael Marti, Senior Vice President of Product Cybersecurity at ConnectWise, and the former Chief Research and Intelligence Officer at ForcePoint, and Stacy Shulman, Vice President of the IoT Group and General Manager of Health, Life Sciences, and Emerging Technologies at Intel. What an amazing, amazing panel. What a wonderful bunch of people looking at all of these incredible innovations. Of course, they were assisted by the editorial team in making those selections. So, to present the AI Innovation Awards for 2021, please welcome VentureBeat's Executive Editor, Famida Rashid, and Managing Editor, Wendy Schuchart.
Hello, everyone. I'm Wendy Schuchart, Managing Editor at VentureBeat, and I'm your MC for tonight's AI Innovation Awards. I'd like to welcome you to the third annual AI Innovation Awards. We're super excited to have this program highlighting some of the most amazing work happening in the field of AI. And now it's my pleasure to introduce you to VentureBeat's Executive Editor, Famida Rashid, to say a few words. Famida?
Thank you, Wendy. I'm so glad to be here with you. We're going to be having this opportunity to talk about all the great things in the field of AI for the AI Innovation Awards. So here at VentureBeat, we have a front row seat to the transformative technology that impact business, society, and the world. And being in the newsroom, we get to write about the people and organizations leading the charge. And these are things that just a few years ago we would have said is totally science fiction. So we have this opportunity to really get involved and see what's going on. So in our writing, we take pride in shining a light on innovation in artificial intelligence. But the AI Innovation Award is a little different because it gives the editorial team here at VentureBeat the opportunity to highlight the ones that really stand apart. For the third annual AI Innovation Award, we honor people and companies engaged in compelling and influential work in 5 areas: natural language processing, edge innovation, business applications, what we call the startup spotlight, and AI for good. So when it's time to figure out who to pick for these awards, we don't just go back and read over all our old articles to find our nominees. There's no fun in that now. Since we're journalists, we treat the awards the same way we write our articles. We go to our sources, we ask a lot of questions, we look over everything we have, and then we look for that special spark that tells us we're looking at something special, new, unexpected. So who are our sources for the AI Innovation Award? That's our nominating committee. The members are Vijay Pandey, the Vice President of Engineering and CTO of Cloud and Distributed Systems at Cisco, Rafael Marti, Senior Vice President of Product Cybersecurity at ConnectWise, also the former Chief Research and Intelligence Officer at ForcePoint, and Stacy Shulman, Vice President of the IoT Group and General Manager of Health, Life Sciences, and Emerging Technologies at Intel. Each member of the committee has a different view of this dynamic and complicated field. They work with some of the greatest minds, get to see some of the latest technology, and they really see what the trends are. So we at VentureBeat appreciate their time and effort to pull together the list of nominees reflecting innovation over the past year. So after our dedicated committee gave us their selections, we in editorial went through the list and made our final picks. There were a lot of spreadsheets involved. It was hard because each of the nominees are excellent at what they do. But we're confident that our selection, that the final winners are truly set apart from their peers. So let's get started. So imagine all the things that become possible when machines can understand how we speak, listen, write, and understand what our words are. So smart assistants are everywhere. Translation services are creating a global world. We have useful productivity tools. There's so many different use cases for natural language processing, which include natural language understanding, natural language generation, and natural language interaction. So this is where we really highlight the innovation in this field.
The nominees for finalists in Innovation in Natural Language Processing and Understanding are Primer AI, Eleuther AI, Dr. Pei Wang at Temple University, Hugging Face, and Copilot from GitHub.
So I feel like we should do a drum roll, but the award for Innovation in Natural Language Processing goes to Hugging Face for democratizing NLP by building an open source community. Sasha Rush is one of the brains behind Hugging Face. So congratulations, Sasha and Hugging Face. So the new ideas and compelling research is amazing, and it's frankly one of the most interesting parts of our job. But it's the practical applications that have the most visible impact on the way we live and work. Low-code, no-code tools, RPA, intelligent software and services, these all help solve real-world problems.
The nominees for the finalists for Innovation in Business Applications are Incorta, Dr. Sheila Nierenberg of Cornell Medical School, DeepSea.ai, Pilot, and Indico. Who's the winner?
The award for Innovation in Business Applications goes to Pilot for its work applying AI in fintech. Congratulations, Pilot. So the pendulum swings regularly between processing all the data in a centralized location and processing data right on the device. So with the Internet of Things and all these always-on networks that we're going to get with 5G, there's so many opportunities with sensors collecting real-time data and autonomous technologies such as self-driving cars. So the edge is an exciting place to be.
The nominees for finalists Innovation in Edge are Autonomy Institute, DECA Research ROXO Team, EdgeWorks, Samba Nova Systems, and Multiply Labs. And I feel like I should hand you an envelope, Famina, like the envelope is.
And I'm going to receive it. And the award for Innovation in Edge goes to Samba Nova Systems for its work delivering data-intensive apps from the data center to the edge. Congratulations, Samba Nova.
Congratulations.
Now, there are many players in the field, from small startups working on one very specific idea, or academic and private research laboratories pushing the boundaries of what we can do, and then large, well-funded companies that explore the answers to all kinds of questions. So in the startup spotlight, we focus on the small companies, the startups, the ones that have raised $35 million or less in funding and have been in operation for 2 years or less. These are the companies that we anticipate in a couple years is going to be the ones that everybody knows about.
The nominees for the finalists for the Startup Spotlight are Epiro, Medical Informatics Corporation, Udyog Yuntra, parity, and tab 9. Famara, who's the winner?
And I really need to learn. There you go. You do a better job of drumming than I do. The Startup Spotlight Award goes to Parity for its work to identify and remove bias from AI systems. Congratulations, Parity. Like, this is going to be awesome. No more bias in AI. Like, this is going to be great. I don't know what we're going to write about, but this is going to be a great thing for the world. So this is my favorite category because we talk always about how AI is doing all kinds of things, transforming the world, making things easier, faster, and more efficient. But a lot of the time, those are related to business, how we want to shop, what kind of movies we want to see, well, what's our healthcare going to look like. But then there's all these people who are using AI to really make the world a better place. So it's for AI technology, the application of AI, or advocacy or activism. This award is for those people, those companies that are working to improve our lives or fighting injustice, improving equality, and just in general, better serving humanity.
Wonderful. I'm so excited about this one too. The nominees for AI for Good are Jake Porway of DataKind, Folding at Home, David Rolnick, the Internet Watch Foundation, Marinus Analytics, and Carla Gomes. Who's the winner?
I feel like we need to create suspense here. And the award for AI for Good goes to Folding at Home. This is the group that does protein folding. They take resources from other people's computers, like a crowdsourcing way. And the really awesome thing is the work that they did with protein folding actually contributed to finding the vaccine. Like all that work that all these people were doing on their individual computers led to the work that eventually became the vaccine that we're all using. Like, how awesome is that? So congratulations, Folding at Home.
Congratulations to all of our winners.
So thank you again to our nominating committee, to Bijoy Pandey from Cisco, Rafael Marty from ConnectWise, and Stacy Sharman from Intel. Thank you so much. And thank you to the nominees and the winners, and everyone else working on these transformative technologies to make our world a better place. We here at VentureBeat appreciate the opportunity to chronicle the changes you're making that affect all of us. Congratulations again, all the nominees and the winners.
And thank you, Famara. Thank you again to our committee and to our editorial team for supporting this year's AI Innovation Awards. Again, for a complete list of all of the talented nominees pushing the boundaries of AI, head on over to VentureBeat.com for a full list. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Fantastic. That was absolutely wonderful. Thank you to Megan and Gina. Congratulations to all the worthy winners, and thank you to the nominating committee and editorial team. Up next to introduce our 2021 Women in AI Awards, please welcome Megan Peedle and Gina Joseph of VentureBeat. Take it away.
Hi, everyone. I'm Megan Fidel, Director of Event Marketing here at VentureBeat, and your host for the Women in AI Awards. I'd like to welcome you to the third annual Women in AI Awards show, and now our second online. This year, we're excited to kick off the program by highlighting some of the amazing work happening by the women in the field of AI. And now it's my pleasure to introduce you to VentureBeat's Executive Vice President of Strategy and Partnerships and co-founder of VB Lab, Gina Joseph, to say a few words.
Thank you, Megan. I'm thrilled to be here today for the third annual Women in AI Awards to support and recognize women leaders in AI. As a leading publication focused on AI news, our goal here at VentureBeat is to discover, share, educate, and inform people about transformative technologies that impact business, society, and the world. We are also building a community of practitioners, scholars, and leaders around AI. We hope these efforts will recognize the need and opportunity to improve fairness in our world. And that means embedding ethics, diversity, and inclusion in the heart of organizations and within the AI systems they create and deploy. Together, we need to make sure that leaders in AI truly represent the society at large and that we're supporting the growing role of women in tech. VentureBeat's Women in AI Awards recognizes extraordinary women thinkers, leaders, and innovators in AI. Today, we honor women who have made outstanding contributions in 5 areas: responsibility and ethics of AI entrepreneurship, AI research, AI mentorship, and rising star.
We received nearly 160 nominations for our Women in AI Awards for 90 amazing nominees across 5 categories. You can find a complete list of nominees announced on VentureBeat or find the pinned article below the main stage. And now let's get started on announcing our first set of finalists and winner for the Entrepreneurship Award. Gina, over to you.
AI has its roots in research and development, but the entrepreneurs are the ones spinning theory into practice and building businesses. Bringing AI out of a laboratory and into the real world requires vision, dedication, and innovation. Here are the entrepreneurs dominating the cutting edge of AI.
Now the finalists for excellence in AI entrepreneurship are Brianna Brownell, Nurit Cohen-Inger, Caitlin McGregor, Daria Shapovalov, and Liana Vivers.
The AI Entrepreneurship Award goes to Brianna Brownell, founder and CEO of Pure Strategy. Congratulations, Brianna.
Wow, thank you so much for this award. I'm so excited to be nominated alongside such amazing entrepreneurs doing absolutely amazing things in artificial intelligence. And I really believe that AI is one of those technologies that is going to be a part of everyone's life in the future. And so I wanted to thank VentureBeat and the selection committee, Roger Sanford, who nominated me. And thank you to all the employees and clients that we have that are wonderful to work with and that allow us to do such amazing things in AI. Thank you.
The laboratory is where we develop and test the technology to unlock AI's future. With this category, we shine the spotlight on the hard work done by researchers in public and private institutions to fuel the next wave of transformative AI technology, drive thought leadership, and challenge the status quo.
The finalists for this year's AI Research Award are Gabriela Barros, Anjali Dewan, Deepta Kaura, Guy Lee, Dr. Nuria Oliver, and Ramya Ramakrishnan.
And the AI Research Award goes to Dr. Nuria Oliver, Chief Scientific Advisor at Vodafone Institute. Congratulations, Dr. Nuria.
Hi, I'm Nuria Oliver. I am delighted, excited, and grateful to have been awarded with the AI Research category of the VentureBeat AI Awards. I would like to thank Dr. Katia Walsh, who nominated me, and I would also like to congratulate all the other winners. Finally, I wanted to thank VentureBeat for this necessary and important initiative to give visibility to women who are working on AI. Thank you.
Recent events have highlighted that responsibility and ethics in AI is not just the right thing to do, it's a foundational requirement for any AI project or deployment to succeed. Not only do practitioners have to curb potential biases in their work, they also need to recognize that what they are building can make the world a fairer and better place, or it could potentially cause more harm.
And the finalists for this year's Responsibility and Ethics in AI Award are Merv Hickok, Sudha Jump, Hania Mahmudia, Alexandra Moisilovic, Lavina Ramkisun, Hillary Richters, Noel Silver, and Yazoo.
And the Responsibility and Ethic Award has a rare tie and double win. The winners are Hania Mahmudia, Global AI Ethicist at Data Robot, and Noel Silver, founder of Women in AI. Congratulations, Hania and Noel.
For a long time, the field of artificial intelligence was dominated by men. But now women's effort and contributions have been recognized and acknowledged. The VentureBeat's Women in AI Award shines a light on these accomplishments by women. However, the need for responsible and ethical use of AI have become more and more apparent in recent years. I am thrilled to be among these outstanding women who have been nominated for this category and have pushed to integrate ethics and responsibility into AI systems. I am honored to be the winner of this category. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, I cannot believe this. What an incredible honor. I am so very, very grateful to the team at VentureBeat for all of the work you all put into this. And I am always grateful to this team for that. Congratulations on 3 years of the Women in AI Awards. I am beside myself with an opportunity to be able to accept one. This is incredible. Most importantly though, the work of the women who are nominated in this category. If I can do nothing else, it is that I will become an advocate and champion for getting more people to know the incredible work that you are doing in this space. So what I decided to do is create a list on Twitter of everyone I could find that was nominated so that we as the community can follow and celebrate their work. It is so important that we as a community get more people aware of the work that you all are doing. It's incredible. Thank you so much for this award. I do not take it lightly. It is life-changing for me, and I'm honored to have shared the category with such incredible women.
The power of mentorship simply cannot be overstated, particularly in STEM fields where leadership from women is still woefully behind their male counterparts. Mentors provide guidance, encouragement, and help identify opportunities, and they don't always receive recognition for the hours and the work they put in behind the scenes. We are proud to have this opportunity to recognize some amazing women leaders who are making a difference to build up the next generation of successful women in AI through their mentorship.
And the finalists for this year's AI Mentorship Award are Margaret Gerritsen, Dr. Tanya Mishra, Noel Silver, Suju Rajan, and Katya Walsh.
And the AI Mentorship Award goes to Katya Walsh, Chief Strategy and AI Officer at Levi Strauss. Congratulations, Katya.
It is a huge honor to accept the Women in AI Mentorship Award. I'd like to thank the entire organization of Levi Strauss & Company for creating the industry-first machine learning bootcamp. So many of our first graduates were women who had never even seen code in their lives before and are now using AI in their day-to-day jobs. And I'd like to also thank VentureBeat for your contribution to the advancement of women in AI and beyond. Thank you.
Innovators have always started at the ground level and rose quickly. We believe in highlighting those who we believe could be AI legends in the making. The AI Rising Star Award honors women in the early stages of their AI careers who have demonstrated that special something to set them apart.
And the nominees for this year's Rising Star Award are Megan Brown, Uparna Dinukaran, Kavita Ganeshan, Arizu Sultani Pana, and Vanessa Volz.
And the AI Rising Star Award goes to Arzo Sultani Panah, Research Fellow at Deakin University. Congratulations, Arzo.
Hi everyone, my name is Arzu and I'm talking to you all the way from Melbourne, Australia. Super to here. I'm honored and super excited to accept the Women in AI Leadership Award in Rising Star category. Thanks VentureBeat and all my supportive colleagues at Simba for giving me this amazing opportunity. My hope is that let's say in 10 years, we don't need a gender award for women in STEM, and I believe that would not happen unless we give women as much recognition as they make here. Thanks again and bye for now.
Thank you to all the women leaders nominated and for inspiring us. It's important we continue to recognize women leaders who are doing such meaningful work in AI. Artificial intelligence is changing our world, and it's the people behind AI that make a difference. Congratulations to all the nominees and winners.
Thank you to everyone who submitted nominations for this year's awards. While we only mentioned the finalists and the winners, again, for a complete list of all of the talented nominees pushing the boundaries of AI, you can check out the article linked below the main stage. Now, I would like to pass the virtual mic one more time to our CEO and founder of VentureBeat, Matt Marshall, for some final remarks.
Wow, this brings us to a close. What an enlightening and insightful 5 days of content and conversation. We heard from dozens of Fortune 1000 company executives about their AI and data stories. On day one and day two, we heard from heavy hitter consulting companies with some deep perspective. First, Accenture on the main trends. They were a partner. Thank you, Accenture. They talked about the need for speed, the new mantra around 6 months. The second trend being the C-suite is now leaning in on this, and there's a massive shift to using AI. Finally, data is more readily available for companies than before for using. Capgemini discussed the impressive profit and revenue results of companies and employees that turn themselves into data experts and data expert teams. On day three, Five9 took us nice and deep on everything around NLP, conversational AI, and intelligent virtual agents. And Capital One was a great example of what you can do as a real company transforming your business with AI. On day four, we dived into the edge and data stack and Vodafone and showed us a great example of how it's being done. We heard over and over that this transformation is about data and starting small with a real problem and clean data. Our editing team summarized the highlights today, which I hope you were able to see. Now remember, all the videos from these 5 days are freely available on demand in case you didn't catch something. I certainly didn't catch everything myself. As I mentioned in my opening, on Monday, VentureBeat's mission is to build a community of decision makers who can learn and transact. And I hope we help some of you do that this week. Now we are expanding the Transform franchise. On October 13th, we'll be hosting our Transform CXO Summit on low code, no code. That's right there in the slide. On December 8th, we'll host a Customer Experience Summit, and you can sign up now. We hope to see you there. Meantime, I hope you stay tuned with VentureBeat as we cover the daily drumbeat of news and insight around data technology and strategy. Finally, I want to say thank you to everyone who made this possible. Thank you to all of our excellent speakers. A special thanks to researcher Margaret Mitchell, who came to us vulnerable, but who opened up about her story and talked about those core things that are necessary that much of Silicon Valley has not gotten right. She was reasonable, recognizing the need to push forward with this powerful technology, but with guardrails. She stressed the need for more foresight, the need for two-way communication within organizations, including a way for the folks in research who are thinking about wider implications of technology to have a stronger voice. And three, the importance of self-regulating and working within a company to affect change. A special thanks to our partners, especially to Accenture, Five9, Capgemini, Capital One, and DataStax, who made this possible. There were other sponsors. And to the larger team that made this possible, Evergreen, Rob and Chris, the geniuses behind the scenes who you never saw, who made all this work seamless. And to the VentureBeat family, including the core team of Megan, Ben, Hari, who worked tirelessly on this daily for the last year, and to Suchi Rana, who came in as an acting general manager just a couple of months ago to help us across the finish line. Thank you to Stuart, the moderator, doing such a great job with his corny jokes, but we all love them. I can't mention everyone else by name, but you know who you are. We look forward to seeing you again later this year.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Matt. And yes, before we go and let you out into the wild to get away from your screens, we do have some final little bits and pieces that we have to clean up. First of all, we got some Amazon gift cards to give away. So let's reveal the names of our networking winners. Remember, we're giving away 3 $100 Amazon gift cards today for those of you that went into the networking areas. And those winners are, tiny drum roll, everybody, tiny drum roll. You can do it on your desk, wherever you may be. First up, we have Minhaj Raymond. Minhaj, well done. You have a $100 Amazon gift card coming to you. We'll be in touch soon. Second up, another tiny drum roll, Jimmy Kivlin. Sorry, Jimmy. Murdered your second name there. Jimmy Kivlin. There you go, Jimmy. You also have $100 to spend at Amazon. And last but not least, congratulations to Karen Beraldo. Karen, well done. That's awesome. We also have to give away yet another $100 of Amazon gift card goodness. We measured all of the people using hashtag VBTransform. And as we said, we would give a $100 Amazon gift card away to the person that created the most engagement. Our hashtag winner is Tahar Kashoot. Tahar, congratulations. Of course, we'll be in touch with you too. Of course, as Matt said, we couldn't do this without an awful lot of people. First up, let's give a final thanks to our sponsors. Our sponsors, thank you so much. We really couldn't do this without you. Abe.ai, Accenture, Appen, Beyond Minds, Capgemini, Capital One, DataStax, Five9, Intel, Kazisto, Labelbox, Skillsoft, Snowflake, Soul Machines, Tamer, Telium, and Unity. Thank you to all of you. Of course, we have to thank our partners one last time too. Once more, we just couldn't have brought this to you without them. Thank you to 3PC, AnyClip, Data Natives, Data Science Salon Virtual, Evergreen Creative, Unite.ai, Women in Big Data, Women in Data Science, Women in Voice. Of course, if you're interested in becoming a VB Insider or VIP, you can learn more about that by logging into VentureBeat at the top right, up there somewhere. We'd love to have you join our VentureBeat community. And before I let you all go, I just have to add my own personal thanks. Thank you to Matt. Thank you for putting up with my corny jokes all the time. Thank you to the entire team. And most importantly, thank you to you, because we do this for you. And we definitely could not do this without you, because all of those incredible speeches from all of those incredible speakers would fall on deaf ears unless you were here watching, interacting, getting involved, networking, and taking advantage of everything we had on offer for you this year. Thank you, everybody, once again for attending Transform 2021. And please, 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 absolutely keep in touch, stay in the network, watch on demand, and we'll see you at the next event. Looking forward to it. Bye for now.